Previously on the Project Umbrella podcast.
Stars Tyrant, you've been very busy twitching.
I'm still totally keen for hats on all enemies. I really am. I think
we're so used to him sort of blindly throwing a grenade over his shoulder and winking at the camera and then speeding up on his bike.
He likes to say Jesus Christ a lot in this. How far do you think this remake train can run?
I have a PAL copy of the original, and someone's written in the back in the notes just 2 words. It just says "Be safe."
Oh, that's lovely.
Project Umbrella.
Hello and welcome to episode 50, yet we can't believe it either, of the Project Umbrella podcast. That's more episodes than some of the greatest shows ever made, including Faulty Towers, Gavin and Stacey, The In-Betweeners, but sadly not as much as Love Island. I'm Nick, better known as Neptune, and in the spirit of the remake, I wondered how our podcasters would be if they were given a reimagining. Ask him who the lead character of Resident Evil 3 Nemesis is. He has no idea. It's Batman.
Hello.
His favourite director, well, that'll be Paul W.S. Anderson. It's Rombie.
Hi.
And finally, he has a 100% accuracy record with the rocket launcher. It's Stars Tyrant.
Hello. Thanks for that.
Coming up, well, anyone who's watched his streams will know he's superb. Anyway, coming up on today's podcast, we've got no time for news. We're not bothering. The news is Resident Evil 2 has been announced. That's all you need to know about. We're going straight into the Remake 2 discussion. Bit of housekeeping. This podcast will be looking at the game itself in a nutshell, if you like. We're not going to be talking about the lore and the future of the Resident Evil series because of this, where it fits in the timeline. That's saved for episode 51, which we can't wait for that. But this one, we're going to be looking at how the game played, the mechanics, the lighting, the graphics, what we liked, what we didn't like, the different areas. And we've decided to do what some of our popular podcasts have done in the past and kind of go through it area by area and dissecting every location to its detail. We've had a lot of call-ins as well, so we're going to be going through some of them. In fact, we've had so many, we've realised we may have to put some on episode 51, but we'll see how we go. And if we've got time, we'll have a new edition of Neptune's Biohazard quiz. So with that in mind, we'll start off with Remake 2.
No, don't shoot!
Get down!
We gotta get out of here.
You alright?
Yeah, I think so. Thanks.
You can thank me later, when we're safe.
Holy shit.
Come on! Get in! Hold on.
What the hell is going on?
I don't know. Hopefully they'll have some answers at the police station.
Wait, you're a cop?
Yeah, Leon Kennedy. You are?
Claire. Claire Redfield.
Live around here?
No. I'm looking for my brother. He's a cop too.
Well, it's a good thing we found each other. I don't know what to expect anymore.
Attention all citizens. Due to the citywide outbreak, you are advised to take shelter at the Raccoon City Police Station. Free food and medical medical supplies will be provided to everyone in need.
God, this is so unreal.
Police station's not much farther. They'll know something.
Yeah, but what if we're the only ones? What if there's no
No,
survivors?
there's survivors. It's a big city. There has to be.
Well, it's been a long time getting here, gentlemen, but Resident Evil Remake 2 is with us. We've had it for a couple of weeks, as of tomorrow, I believe. It's been one of the most anticipated and hyped Resident Evil games I can remember. What were your brief impressions after, well, if that's even possible, to put it in a concluding or opening paragraph? I don't know.
It was everything I expected, or everything I thought it would be. It's not been quite as damaging as I thought it would be in terms of it being a Resident Evil experience. I'll just put it out there. It's probably the purest we've had in quite some time.
Batman?
Really, really liked it. I had a lot of fun with this game. To be honest, to give it a bit of background, anyone who listens to this podcast regularly will know that I wasn't a fan of the idea of remaking Resident Evil 2. But when Capcom finally showed it off, I was very impressed with how it looked. And as they released more and more media and videos, it became clear that this was much more of a reimagining than a straight-up remake. And Capcom clearly wanted to change around as much as they could get away with whilst retaining the essence of the original. And it was largely because of this that I was able to lay many of my fears to rest and embrace the game. I think it looked superb, it played superb. The RE engine really is something of a triumph in my eyes. I know people have complained of a few issues, but it probably has the best zombies in a video game ever for me. It just seemed to be the perfect blend of old and new, classic puzzles, classic locations, classic horror scenario mixed with the over-the-shoulder camera of Resident Evil 4 and 5 and 6 and the inventory system of 7. Yeah, really, really enjoyed it. Minor nitpicks over the story and the soundtrack, but overall I think Capcom have hit the bullseye with this.
Rombie, do you share that view?
Pretty much. I mean, I think I was pretty positive.
You were?
From the get-go. I out of all of us, to be fair. And so I just accepted it for what it was. Mostly because at the end of the day, they're just going to do what the company's always going to see fit. I think the more I think about it, I think I'm more conflicted. I think on a gameplay level, I've really enjoyed it. I think it's a return to form, but at the end of the day as well, I kind of almost feel like I would have preferred this entire style as a new game rather than a remake, if I was going to be bluntly honest, which isn't like a bad thing. The remake's great for what it is. Trying to sum it up into a nutshell right now is an unfathomable part. It's the fact that the guys have already said so much, pretty much. I have to agree with a lot of it. I mean, reimagining is definitely the easiest way to determine it, and I think that's the thing that becomes more and more clear the more you play it, that the term remake is almost a misnomer. It's not exactly the correct label. It's like it's taken inspiration from its origins, and then they've decided to change as much as possible. But at the same time, it is the most purest experience gameplay-wise we've had for years. To pull out a map and point and plan a route and avoid conflict and confrontation as much as possible, and find that the boss battles in particular don't feel. I think I've complained about this before with, like, say, Revelations, where it's an area where you come to a place and you're just like, this is a bottleneck. It's intentionally here to make sure that I have to. The fights do not feel like a bottleneck. They feel like earned confrontations. And so, yeah, it's to summarize, it's pretty hard to say. Conflicted maybe is maybe I should just use the word conflicted.
No, I was keeping it vague.
Yeah. Sorry, sure. You can come back to this. But yeah, no, in terms of my own view, I thought it was absolutely sensational game. In many ways, it was like Resident Evil 4 in the sense that Resident Evil 4 was heralded as being one of the greatest games, one of the best games, but people didn't think it was necessarily a good Resident Evil game for perhaps obvious reasons. I think this took that mantra and just said, no, we're going to make a brilliant Resident Evil game, and I think they knocked it out of the park with so much, the atmosphere, the graphics, the zombies. There are things I don't like, and I will come to it, and I've been quite vocal about not wanting this, and that view hasn't necessarily changed, but because of the fact that Capcom clearly didn't care too much about the overall narrative of the storyline, and I think that's quite clear throughout. They just wanted to make a game that people could play and go, oh yeah, I remember this bit, or I remember something like this back in my mind, and for that level, on that level, it worked, and it really was that reimagining, and you can distinguish it quite well from the remake of Resident Evil 1, which was a straight up remake. So, but I loved it. I thought it was brilliant, and from my point of view, it brought back that dread feeling. I didn't really want to play it. The number of times I think I opened up the save room door, peeked out, and there's Mr. X again. Hello, and I go, nope, straight back in again. That's that feeling that I had in 7, and I definitely had with this. I thought it was sensational. But in my opinion, the game didn't start particularly well. When you first loaded it up and you were on a tutorial level, an in-game tutorial, which is almost commonplace and standard in most games. As much as I think a lot of fans wanted to go straight into the street sections and run away and probably die, Capcom don't allow that much nowadays, and so you have the opening part in the petrol station. I didn't really enjoy it much, to be honest. The opening cinematic was quite interesting with the chappie moaning about his wife story and whatnot, but I didn't like it. I thought it was unnecessary. But does anyone like the opening part?
I didn't mind it for what it was, although when I very first loaded up for the first time, I couldn't resist the urge to just run up and down the road in the rain to see how far it would let me go before it forced me to turn back.
It's a nice flip of Leon's opening cutscene, in that it's the driver that gets out and inspects the body in the road, and it's Leon and Claire that go to the petrol station this time. They actually invert the original, which is a nice touch, I guess. I suppose from the get-go, that's a way of telling you everything's not quite as you remember it. Whereas the original game's remake, okay, the intro is different, but once you sort of get into the gameplay, it's very familiar. It all looks new, but it's familiar. This was straight out the door. Things are very different this time around.
I think it served its purpose as well as a little tutorial.
Sure, yeah.
It's a really, really nice cinematic where it's ripping the flesh off the Arkley Sheriff's neck, and then you have to run back out as an optional way to do it. There's a couple of little jump scares where zombies jump over the shelves. I think it was fine. It's maybe a bit unnecessary to create all this just for the sake of giving you a little tutorial, but it was all right for what it was. It's nice and short.
I always thought that the geography was weird. There's quite a lot of zombies to be that far out of town.
Yeah.
But that was just, I was going, oh, okay. I don't quite know how far you are, but clearly you're far enough from Leon not to have noticed anything.
Well, you get the city limit sign, don't you?
Yeah,
the Operation Raccoon City sign.
And ladies and gentlemen, that's not your first Operation Raccoon City throwback.
Oh no, Rob, did you have any thoughts on the opening bit, or was it just as it was?
It is what it was. I mean, the first thing that kind of took me out of the game, and I don't know if you guys noticed this, I didn't care so much about the cutscene. I thought the situation with the truck driver, I mean, you had to be in there somewhere. It was probably the best option to kind of start with. Was the fact that the woman that he hits on the road, is it me or did it look like Mia? Like they actually used her character model from Resident Evil 7. Actually. I just wanted to throw that out. It kind of took me a little bit out of the game. I was like, have they just recycled as a zombie for this game? But I mean, Sean probably nailed it on the head. Really, it's like it's that idea of inverting, and it's something they do so much through the game as well. That
yes,
it is inverting things that were established that are non-consequential. Like it doesn't really matter whether or not Leon arrived in the center of town or found out at a petrol station. That's never really mattered. He's got to find out at some point. My only concern with the opening, as far as it goes, is why at that point, aside from Claire potentially wanting to find out what happened to her brother, which you don't establish until they've already driven, is why would you drive towards the city at this point? You're actually still on the outskirts, so you could easily turn around and leave and then find out what's going on. I mean, Leon's decided that he wants to come in because he hasn't heard anything. Now he's seen why he hasn't heard anything. Does he really need to go into the city, into the police station to find out what's been going on? Not really. And that's the difference, I think, that really maybe is the biggest change of actual character development. Whereas when they arrived in the city last time, it's, it's in the city before they finally see the zombies. I guess on that take, the next bit going into the city, and I guess this is where we're heading anyway, is that I did actually like the fact that they arrive and the place is chaos. Like there's roadblocks, there's traffic jammed, there's, it looks like what an actual, if this event had been happening in the city and they tried to kind of control it and limit it, it's kind of what was hinted to in Resident Evil 3, the original version of Resident Evil 3, assuming that they're going to remake it, is definitely going to continue down this path, because I think that part felt way more believable.
Yes, I suppose that the 29th, it's the 29th of September. In the original, it's pretty much a ghost town at this point, City of the Dead, whereas only 24 hours later, you've got all what's going on in Resident Evil 3. It's a lot more, and of course in Outbreak, there's a lot more things going on. So yes, I think they got that bit right. But
I will say first sort of controversial one then. Out the door, and this really goes for all the characters in this game. And I don't know how you guys felt, and I know some people have felt very differently to me on Twitter. But I will say, particularly in the case of Claire, I found the characters in the original very warm and very easy to get on along with and understand straight away. I don't think out the door the characters are that likeable in this game. I think you have to really work on it. Like Claire, I find she just really jars me. The way, she's very overconfident, and when she comes out the phone booth, she's very. Who is she on the phone to, by the way?
Best friend.
There's just something about like the characterizations in this, and we'll get to it with Ada as well, because I just really don't think the characters are all that likeable. Some of them get there, which we'll discuss as we go through it. But certainly out the gate, I think the characters were much more likeable in the original. I think the chemistry that was in the police car scene in the original was a lot better. But I do think it gets there. I'm not writing off the entire game's characterization and things like that. But just certainly straight away, I got usually, I'm always really happy to see Claire, because she's one of my favourite characters in the series, and straight away I got I'm not sure about this interpretation of her. But that's just me, and I'm not speaking for everybody.
No, it took me. I don't think I actually got Claire until right towards the end. But
I agree with that as well.
But yeah, I think my disappointment with the opening was, I suppose I classify the kind of tutorial part with my disappointment of not having a proper street section. I was looking, for all the kind of chaos and whatnot, I really wanted to see a lot more of the city. And as soon as you crash, it's like, head to the RPD. It's like, yes, off we go. Oh, there it is. Yeah. And, and it was like, you had to do a bit of zombie dodging, but, nothing on the level of the opening of the game, of the original. That requires a bit of skill to dodge them. But this was like, do. And I was at the front door, and I was like, well, that didn't take long.
It's like the first bit of the street section in the original game only, and then that's it. And then it's not, and as you said, not very challenging. It's very easy to get around without even having to even come really that close to most.
I think in the original game, what made it so powerful was that when you got to the RPD, there was that sense of relief that you knew you weren't, but you could be in a relatively safe area. You open the door, you get that amazing cutscene, that music kicks in, and you're like, oh, okay, is this safe? I don't know. Whereas this is like, you've had 2 seconds to get out of the car, run to the RPD, and then you're kind of in the RPD. You've had no time to, I don't feel, believe that that there could be salvation within the RPD.
Yeah. When you get to the main hall in the original, it is like it's a sigh of relief, isn't it? It's like a breather, because that section, the first time you've played it, you really are thrown in at the deep end. By the time you get to the RPG, you're like, fucking hell, did I survive that? I'm on danger, I'm limping through the door, but suddenly I just feel slightly warmer and safe.
Yeah, you survived the gauntlet of the arrival. There is none of that in this version.
It's a completely different feeling when you get to the RPD in this, isn't it? Because of all they've turned it into like a trauma ward or whatever for survivors, and you just think, what the fuck's happened here? Whereas the first one, it's cold, it's silent, it's empty. It's a bit unsettling, but at the same time, it feels safe.
Yeah, I do think some of the RPD's majesty is lost in the remake through the sheer amount of extra detail there are now. I said this about the original remake, the original game and the original remake. I kind of like the sort of empty, vacant spaces of the very original, sometimes to the over-detailed corridors of the remake. The remake's a better game and it's visually way more impressive, but there's something about that sort of eerie emptiness that I really liked in the first few Resident Evil games.
I think in a lot of ways when you talk about like that mansion by comparison, it was the fact that the mansion at that point really felt like more of a front to the lab, you know what I mean? Like that the mansion never really mattered as much as the laboratories hidden away, in that it was more about the fact that anyone ever came out and saw this mansion, they just think it was an old mansion and that there wasn't anything hidden. And that's the inherent difference I think you're talking about. There was immediately in the remake, it felt like that was the case. And I think, but the thing is, I'm going to be controversial and counter this, is the fact that I do actually like the fact that the RPD became like a base, a civil defense thing, because that is natural. It's kind of a continuation. My concern is that it is that flip side that we talked about, I just talked about before, which is that it felt naturalistic that there was these barricades and they had this PA announcement telling people to go there because it's a safe zone, and yet it wasn't that much of an effort to get there. It was not very hard given the distance that had to be covered and all that sort of stuff. It would have made more sense that there was more chaos surrounding the RPD because everyone had started going there. That should take you a lot longer to get to it because it's blocked off, because there's more dead people, because there's more traffic. And it just doesn't, those things don't match up.
I mean, you could argue the original street scene is in there in its entirety. It's just mixed up throughout the game. Like there's a party scene later on with the Kendo gun shop van blocking an alleyway, and obviously you pass through a bus as Claire to get to the orphanage, don't you? It's just mixed up throughout the game, but it could have been a lot longer. And I have to say, the street level, as short as it is, looks gorgeous with the rain and the fire effects. It really is impressive.
Straight away, they establish the fact that they're not adhering to original Raccoon geography as well.
I think that played to its advantage because, as I said, me being the sceptical bugger that I am, I was playing the game and I was like, oh, how does this fit? But you're right, as soon as I got to the RPD and everything had changed within, I'd only been playing 2 minutes, I felt more at ease. In a kind of a completely odd situation. I was like, okay, this is going off in its own direction. I can actually now sit back and enjoy it, rather than being perhaps that over-critical, over-scrutinized fan that I knew I was going to be. But it went so quickly because I just embraced this new take on the game straight away.
Yeah, I mean, straight away you get to the main hall then, and things are again a little bit different. So
we're introduced to Marvin, good old Marv, who I thought Marvin's performance was brilliant. I didn't necessarily like the dialogue, i.e. not knowing anything about, I haven't got a clue what's going on, which seemed a bit odd, but that's only because we know Marvin. But if you're coming in from with fresh pair of eyes, it may, there's a degree of sense in that. But I thought Marvin was really good. And I thought this performance was exceptional.
And again, obviously we're going to leave the canon and storyline stuff to the next one, but briefly just touch upon the fact that because he doesn't make any reference to the original game, because there isn't that opening prologue bit, the narrated section where it's like 2 months ago it was, and all that. They straight away give you the feeling that this is a self-contained story. That we were thinking going in. We've talked about this on the preview podcast. How many references is it going to be? How many cameos? And I think straight away it tells you you're not going to get any because this is just going to be a bubble of an experience. And that's probably a good thing. And it helps. It helps the canon argument when we get there.
One of my fears I heard early on was I felt as though it was going to handhold us through the game, because you have the forced bit at the start, don't you, where you have to look at the security camera and go through the east wing to rescue Elliot.
You don't have to look at the security camera. You can just go straight for the...
You have to go through that door, don't you?
Yeah, you have to go to that section, yeah.
And you have to trigger his encounter, and then you come back and speak to Marvin, and then he gives you the knife to open up the west wing. So for the first 10 minutes or so, it felt like you were forced to go down that path, whereas in the original, it was better when you used the key card to unlock the computer, and it unlocked both doors at the same time. It just gave you that illusion that it was more freedom of choice.
I'm okay with it, though, because if you think about it in context of, say, the original Resident Evil, that's exactly the same as when you arrive in the mansion and you have to go find out what the noise of the gunshots are, and you go in that direction, and if you've got Jill, then you and Barry go. If it's just Chris by himself, and you have to go and explore and then come back to the main hall to find that people have disappeared or whatever is going on, So to me, that's just the equivalent of that. It's not a bad thing, because you still get to that open part. It's just in this case, it takes a little bit of time. I don't think that's really an issue. I didn't get that feeling simply because it's very similar to the original Resident Evil in that respect. Just something that 2 hadn't done, but it's not better or worse for it. It's just what it is.
I think the fear was genuine, though. I think I shared that kind of, oh god, is this going to be like Resident Evil 5-esque hand holding, go to X, but again, it's more of a tutorial, isn't it? The opening bit in the East Wing, because it shuts it down afterwards. You get to explore the area. You get to see how well the torch works or doesn't work. You get to see how great the lighting is. You can move the locker out of the way, can't you? Just squeeze past, and it builds up. Then you see the zombie kind of outbreak, if you like, within you're like, oh my god, this is what I'm up against. Quick, make it back, and then you get the cool scene with the head coming off.
It's quite a linear path all the way till Marvin summons you back to the... It's pretty much a linear path until you speak to your other partner character through the gate, and then you get the bolt croppers, and then the game opens up and lets you do what you want. But certainly up to there, it does feel like you've got a HUD and you've got somewhere always to go, and it's like...
Talking about the openness, it did quickly establish that illusion of where you wanted to go. We've always said that's one of the big plus points of Resident Evil 7, was that there was that kind of hub area where you can plan your route and things like that, and it was good that carried on. And what made it, I think, even more interesting was that you had to remember, particular areas are blocked off, and then later, of course, that route's got a liquor in it. Can I avoid that? And then, can I go to the library? That's not a good idea, that type of thing. So there was a lot of, even if it was somewhat linear, I know I need to get to this point to get the red jewel or something like that. There were many ways you could go about getting to that task, and that's what made it quite reminiscent of the old game, I felt. So let's talk about the RPD then in a bit more detail from the graphical point of view. It had a lot of changes from the original, but there was a lot more emphasis on the fact that it was an art museum that's been converted, and you had new kind of rooms like the storage room and things like that, which directly alluded to what art was being stored. And I thought it looked absolutely brilliant. All the rooms looked. I thought it was a perfect homage to what they were and how they would probably look in 1998, and I think they got the aesthetics spot on.
Nostalgia, hasn't it? So when you recognise a bit of the old layout, you go, oh, this is really great seeing this in this new perspective. But the new areas were interesting enough as well. Everything was bolted on very respectfully, I felt.
It didn't feel like they were extraneous additions. They felt like sensible, realistic. I mean, we talked about it early on, obviously, the changes even to the main hall, but it's like even that makes actual sense. The ladder thing never really worked very well, I think, in the original. It was probably more of a technical requirement in order to get, the loading spaces between the upper and lower floors, but it's like it just flows correctly. It doesn't make the layout or the way you explore the RPD any easier or worse. It's just it's a continual change, and they all kind of feel that way, I feel.
I only had one minor criticism, and that was some areas were just too dark. I get they were going for atmosphere, but I wish, the more you went through the game, it would have been nice if you could have restored power to more areas.
Correct, I agree with that too.
As was rumoured, and it didn't end up being the case.
Yeah, that'd been quite interesting. You've had maybe a choice of the fuse boxes and things like that to restore which power, and there'd be different rewards if you did one, so like perhaps something become available that wasn't available if it remains in the dark.
But then again, that fuse box thing was quite a nice idea, because it gives you the option, doesn't it? It's like, right, I can open that door, so I've got an easy route through to the main hall, but then again, that gives Mr. X another route to follow me. So yeah, it might be a pain in the arse going all the way around, but I could technically leave that shutter down.
Yes, I did. I didn't even think of that.
I opened it anyway. I'm sure most people did, but it's nice to have that little choice, isn't it?
I'll also say, talking about kind of new areas, I actually thought the changes to, say, Chief Iron's office worked quite well.
Yeah.
That whole area still felt quite. Although it was relatively new, it was obviously inspired by the old thing, but it felt aesthetically pleasing and made a bit more sense, I think, with the kind of secret area not being as secret, if you know what I mean.
I was pleased they just got rid of his little torture room altogether. and his lift just went down to the car park, didn't he? That made much more sense.
And then moved his torture room to the orphanage, which which I will get to when we get to that section. But that to me was very interesting. But
I don't think there's too many changes that I didn't like the station. To be honest, I think it's all done quite well. I mean, I would say if you were to ask me what I think the most disappointing thing was unfortunately it was the thing I was most looking forward to. Is the Stars office.
Oh yes,
it's like it has some nice little things. Like it's obviously got the desks now to, for each of the both teams, but there was just such a lack of detail.
Having a captain's room as well, like, makes sense. Like, their separate office for the captain made more sense than the old layout. Like, I get that part as well.
I was hoping for so much more in the way of like lore in there and files, and there is precious little outside of pretty much the things you had in the original anyway, like Chris's jacket or Rebecca's little medical pouch that she hangs on the wall.
Again, the armory made sense.
Yeah.
I was surprised they removed little touches like, being able to examine the Stars photograph.
I know. I was gutted. I was hoping we'd get like an up-to-date one with like the remake or Zero Edward instead of the original sort of games version of it.
It would also make sense if you examine it as Claire. She made a comment about the fact that Chris is in the photo, and obviously Leon wouldn't make any comment at all. It's kind of like the file when Claire makes the comment about the file not sounding like Chris, whereas Leon doesn't say anything, obviously, because he doesn't know.
But shout out to the hidden Rebecca photo, and she remains to be one of the only characters that actually still looks like herself, because it's a piece of artwork and and not a 3D capture.
But again, the Stars office again, absolutely no mention of Wesker, which is really odd. As you said, the kind of the captain's room again, great idea. But I mean, I bothered to have a good look at like the wall. It's just it's a random portrait of some person in a black outfit and black hat, and it's like
a spare pair of sunglasses on a stand or something. Just something that being. I mean, he's not. Correct me if I'm wrong, guys. Is Wesker even mentioned by name in anything? Because I don't even think his actual name appears anywhere, does it?
Apart from his gun, which is just an unlockable. So no.
It's so strange.
That seems odd, because even if you're trying to keep this as a self-contained storyline, there should be some acknowledgement of all the Stars or of the key Stars members. It just seems very.
Well, they could have put the nameplates on the desks at this point, because they did it with the office room downstairs. It wouldn't have made any difference. They would have made way more sense at this point, because it would have been consistent with the way that the police officer's room is downstairs.
It's definitely a conscious decision to keep it vague, wasn't it? This game really is. And again, I'm trying not to talk too much about the canon stuff, but just naturally fall into the conversation. This is definitely a Cliff Notes version of Resident Evil 2. That I think is established straight away. They don't go into the detail.
Yeah. And I think even if you just had a self-contained universe with Remake 1 and Remake 2 in it, it would still feel kind of jarring, because the second one, even though it's got zombies in it, it still feels completely unrelated, really, because I think there's 2 references in the entire game to the mansion incident, and both of them are just in files.
And as we'll get to Ada, you don't even get the link of her being John's boyfriend anymore.
John,
cover story, because that could have still been existed. It still doesn't make any difference about her the plausibility of her new cover story. It could have just been an addition to that fact, that she was undercover. Yeah,
I say other rooms that I suppose were other areas of the RPD that stuck out for anyone in particular. What about the new scene with the helicopter?
Well, it's completely non-eventful this time, isn't it? It's even done off screen. No matter how fast you try and be in either scenario, there is no actual physical crash. It's just there.
Yeah. You can hear it.
The closest is. Yeah, the closest to physical is if you're in the A scenario, you're upstairs, you get knocked around and you get a bit of dust flying down the corridor.
Light passes by the window, but I mean it's completely non-eventful.
It feels disingenuous to the amount of impact that an actual helicopter crash would have too on the building. To me, like
it's just such a memorable moment in the original to just be. I mean, I feel exactly the same. It seems to be all to do with helicopters. Mr. X's arrival is just, I think, so uneventful in this. It's just.
He doesn't have an.
No, well, he just lifts the helicopter.
He's just there.
His
Well, yeah, well,
arrival is knocking the helicopter. He's just there. Otherwise, there's no scene of him arriving at the RPD. There's no noise, even a noise somewhere while you're in the building, hearing another helicopter go over,
it was such an epic moment.
The front door. How does he get it? How does he even get in the building?
Yeah.
Like is not established.
When you played Scenario B for the first time, and like you got the cutscene and the Tyrant deployed, and you got that sort of brief half-second shot of his sort of silhouetted face, you thought,
yeah,
well, what is going on? What is this dynamic? And straight away you knew, oh my fucking hell, things are different now. In this, he's just kind of there. He just goes sort of, hi.
Well, it's implied he's been there for a while because he actually kills Ben, doesn't he, before you encounter him at the helicopter?
Yes. Yes,
he sticks through the wall and kills Ben.
Yeah, of course he does, yeah.
Well, let's talk about Mr. X then. We obviously, where he wanders around, we can talk about other rooms that he ventures. I think the library is one of his defining points, because no matter how hard you try, he'll always catch you in the library because you've got stuff to do in the library.
Yeah. And I think
it's all set up on the pretense that you have to go get the lever for the jack lever, and he always turns up there. It's predicated on the fact that they've just connected those things together.
I think if you've not been following the game in the previews and everything, I would imagine there was a few heart and mouth moments the first time he walked into the main hall.
Yes,
you're like, oh god, this is usually my place of safety. Game, what are you doing?
Yes, and I have to have words with you, Batman. When I was playing through the B scenario, I'm safe in the secret room in the main hall. And I take, yes, Nick, no problem. They can't get you down here. Oh, fine, not a problem. Oh, down comes Marvin, and I was like, what are you doing? And I was like, no. I was kind of like just almost taunting him at the bottom of the stairs. And he just I was like, no. And I was really low on that point. But there we go. Mr. X can't come down. That's one of the rooms he can't. And I've seen some funny videos of him trying to get into save rooms and then kind of going, hello, and then going back again.
It is.
Yeah, the clock tower is the same too.
Yes,
I really I as everyone who knows me on Twitter, I played hardcore first and really struggled with it. And then, a long story short, I had to abandon it. And in hardcore, the first time through, Mr. X was a massively stressful experience for me because he just seemed to just turn up at the worst fucking time every time. And because I'd not done a good enough job of like clearing zombies, I wish I'd almost streamed it. The amount of deaths I had trying to do the lever and the jack puzzle in the library with zombies around me and Mr. X. I think I had one shotgun shell left, and it was not happening. I had to do like an extravagant dummy around the station to lose him, to buy me enough time to just be able to do a simple puzzle. And at first, the mechanic, I wasn't sure whether it worked, and it was the thing I looked forward to the most. In the previous podcast, I was like raving how good a mechanic I thought this was. Thankfully, I think it is still probably the game's... I mean, if you only have to go on the internet to see how well and how widespread the love for this mechanic is, and I think they really did ace it. I think it's that idea of like Nemesis or Mr. X completely perfected, the true stalker character who can go anywhere.
Shall we talk about the elephant in the room when you say that the love for it on the internet? Because inherently there's a lot of love for it on the internet. There's a lot of memes and there's also a lot of it's too hard.
The thing is, I think
obviously
he's very easy to outrun though, as long as you play it right.
This is the thing, I don't get it.
Use the scenery properly, and he's very easy to outrun. The biggest fucking problem is zombies.
Yes, so this is a perfect point because I think we all experienced it. I remember we were having private conversations. We were playing. We were going, "This is too difficult." Now you know me. I am terrible at these games anyway. But I braved standard mode, and needless to say, quite how I survived standard mode is possibly one of my greatest Resident Evil achievements so far. But it really is a steep learning curve with the zombies because I think you go in, and it's obviously true of Mr. X, you're quite confident. You think, yeah, I've played Resident Evil 4 and 5. I've got good headshots. And this is something that I think I've raised consistently, how to make that over-the-shoulder view successfully incorporated into a survival horror. You either go the Resident Evil 7 route and just have relentless enemies or like Mr. X, but few and far between. So Resident Evil 2 had to strike a very clear balance, especially when they decided to have Mr. X in this A scenario, about how to make the zombies challenging still keep that survival horror element, but still give you that ability to take them down. And I think a lot of my problem at the beginning was I thought I could just shoot, kill them, and they do not die, the zombies.
Well, I think you've hit the nail on the head in the sense, but maybe just also with Mr. X is that heaps of people are complaining about how difficult it is because they expect that they're not used to the idea that it's an enemy, you get rid of them all. Like I think that's part of the problem. They're like, Mr. X, I can take him out. You can't. You knock him down to a knee occasionally if you waste enough ammo on him, but it's a waste of time because immediately within a couple of rooms he'll be back up on his feet and chasing you again. And I think that's where really people will feel like, it's unfair, I wasted all this ammo, and of course then it makes them underpowered for everything else.
And I think that's the mistake I made because I said I was going through the demo bit at the beginning with the zombies long before Mr. X turned up, and I was like, this is really good. And then I thought, take it, falling on the knees, I was getting out the knife, slashing them, killing them, thought, I've got this nail, brother. And it was just, and then I kept checking the knife, and I saw on the inventory there's like a little bar underneath the knife, and I was like, I don't know what that is. Is that a health bar almost for the knife? No, it can't be. Don't be silly. And I was like slashing away, and I was doing some great shots with his legs cut, limbs flying off. I thought, this is sorted. I'm sorted. Then the knife went, and I thought, it's got damage. That was damaged. And then the zombies just kept coming and coming and coming. And then I'd used up all my ammo by this point because I was going away. I was in Resident Evil 4 mode, I'll be honest. I was going, yeah, good stuff. And then the lickers turned up, and then Mr. X turned up, and I was having all sorts of problems. and I struggled. And honestly, I think by the end, I've told you, the ammo I had for the end boss, it was criminal. What I was on, and I think I lunged through this game at a glacial pace because I was so poor at the beginning, and it made a complete contrast when I did the B scenario. By the end of that, I was armed to the teeth. I was Rambo because I played a lot more conservatively and a lot more wisely with the zombies, and I think that's the key.
To me, I think this is the learning lesson that everyone has always had with Resident Evil, at least to the earlier games at some point. Is that when you first play it and you don't know how to play it, you start attacking everything, and then your resources start dwindling, and then you realize, okay, so that's not how I'm supposed to play it. And of course, it means you're educated on how to play it. And I feel like the backlash that we did see on this comes down to the fact that people are so used to these action-filled titles. If they've played other Resident Evil games, they've been the 4s, the 5s, the 6, the ammo's just thrown at you,
Well, you're encouraged to shoot them because they drop the ammo.
Exactly, yeah, and it's an incentiveness, that you're supposed to kill everything on the map, and you're not supposed to avoid anything. So people continue going and playing it like this, thinking that's the case, forgetting or not realizing this is how the games used to be. And there's the thing, but for someone like you who's even played the original games in the series, you had forgotten this fact. Like, that tells you a lot. Like, that you had just said, it's easy, I can start these enemies. No, the whole focus of the game is that, obviously headshots do not kill immediately, and that your best bet is to shoot out kneecaps and avoid and walk around or avoid. Lickers are a perfect example of that too. Like, lickers are so relentlessly difficult, but at the same time, if you actually play sensibly, they're actually one of the easiest enemies to avoid, because if you walk, they don't hear you. They don't hear you at all.
They just walk into me.
Well, that's the thing. You can avoid walking into them too, because if you just wait, you stand still, they move. They always do. But the thing is as well, and I've told people this, we've talked about it in the chats as well, it's like the genius move about them in the game is that they've programmed them that if you get close to them, if you walk and you get close, they still turn and make a noise, and people freak out because they think, oh shit, it's seen me, but they haven't. But everyone thinks they have, and that's when they do run, and then when they do run, they do see you, and then you basically perpetuate the situation. Genius piece of programming, absolutely genius.
Come on, how good are the zombies in this game? I mean,
sensational.
Come on. Oh, they are amazing.
I struggle with them though. I must say, 4 scenarios played through now, and I still haven't got a decent strategy. I just end up getting absolutely fucked over by them. Because so everybody tells me, just take the legs out, and then you can guarantee when I forget about them, they're in the middle of a fucking stairway, and I can't avoid them anyway.
Your nutshell is that they are telling you the correct thing. This is kneecaps. If you find them in the stairwell, shoot them in the head. Like, you have to get rid of them. That's the way around it, because if they're going to be in the stairwell and it means that you're going back through there, then it's a clear indication. You should only kill the ones that are going to be in your constant line of direction, and if that's a stairwell, then that's definitely a good one that's a one to kill. The worst for me, funnily enough, of all of them, and this is going ahead a little bit, is like towards the sewer sections where there's like narrow stairwell, narrow spaces. That's the big difference between that and say like the RPD, because some of the RPD spaces, they're not narrow, but they're long. So the zombies you can kind of almost corral, or if you corral them down there and then shoot their legs out, then they crawl and they're only in the area that you're not going to come back to. So they're really easy to kind of avoid, or they're easy to trick. Like there's the one that appears in the RPD on the West Wing stairwell that falls, the female zombie that falls over the barrier if you wait downstairs, and then you don't have to worry about her anymore upstairs because she's fallen over the barrier. She's only down the bottom, but occasionally she'll reappear on the stairs at the bottom. She for some reason goes on the stairwell. It's like, well, okay, now I have to take her out because she's blocking the stairway. These are the things that the way to get around them. But it still doesn't mean they're not a challenge. It still doesn't mean you don't find them. I've been playing through the game. I finished it, got the bonus unlockable weapons, and even on the bonus unlockable weapons, when me running through the game being silly, I'll still find zombies behind door spaces or behind places where I wasn't expecting them. I'll walk into a room and I'll go, oh shit, like I'll get a jump scare because they're hidden behind something, or they're not in a place I expected them to be. That is probably the biggest part of it, is the fact that the zombies are so unpredictable.
They do hide behind doors really well.
They do.
Yeah. And not just behind doors, but behind objects as well. Like you come around a corner and all of a sudden their arms, because they've got this very keen and quick ability to spin on the spot and grab, which is great as far as I'm concerned.
And it's the noises they make as well. The noises are fantastic because they just randomly scream, sometimes when they're nowhere near you. A great example is the West office, because it's so dark in there. And you're walking along, I was doing the puzzle with the name badges on the desks, and you just hear one of them just scream, and you turn around thinking, where the fuck is it? And it's in like the sergeant's office at the other end, so you can't see it, but it's just the random screams they do. It's fantastic.
One of the female screams is so loud that it makes you jump a mile sometimes.
I think that's the one that got me in the library. So I came in from the library from the south, near the south thing with the puzzle, with the statue puzzle is, and I wanted to go upstairs to the third floor, and I could hear the female scream, and I was like, shit, where is it? And so I'm rotating the camera while I'm walking up the stairs, trying to look where on the library she is, not realizing she's actually up the stairs where I'm walking towards. Because I'm looking for the source of the noise and not really paying attention to where I'm going. It was, and then I freak out because all of a sudden she grabs me and I can't see it, and I'm like, holy shit, like where did this come from?
Could I say though, in surround sound, it's pretty good as well, because it will come from behind you or something like that. The
direction, yeah. They've got that faux 3D, the 3D binaural audio thing. It's really good. Even on a TV, even on headphones, it's amazing. But even on a TV, you can tell which side of the room or which direction by volume. It's really well implemented.
I think Capcom made them a tad bullet spongy. I think they take a tad. I mean, we're talking maybe 1 to 2 bullets too many.
I think it's just a case of trying to reinvent the wheel a little bit with it, wasn't it? To try and do something different this time.
But as I was playing it, I was just like, these zombies bear a very similar resemblance to the Vendetta zombies.
The other part of it, though, I think is, and I think it's the flip side of it, is that, and we talked about this a little bit because I said this earlier on, I think the mechanic of, like, if you're going to put it into a third-person camera, you have to work out the implementation of, like, quality of aiming. So obviously when you stand still and you aim longer, you get a more pointed reticle because you've had more time to focus on the shot. And what that tends to work out as is that if you do that more often, they take less bullets. So it's a gameplay mechanic that I think really does pay off if you think about it. If you've got the time and the distance to shoot them, then you take more time to aim, you use less bullets. That's what I found. So I think that's the balance. I think that's the sensible balance. Sure, maybe 1 or 2 bullets difference if you're just taking them out, but if you're just aiming at them haphazardly and not even taking that time to aim, then that's part of the problem. Like if you're just shooting at them randomly because you've vaguely aimed at their head or vaguely aimed at their arm or leg or whatever it is, then you don't get the sort of impact you do if you give it a few seconds and let that reticle narrow down. Then you tend to use less ammo.
I would take them being bullet sponges over having too many zombies in the RPD. Having the police station absolutely saturated with zombies, but it would still only take one headshot to kill them. Prefer them to keep it as they've done.
I am nitpicking. I just thought, even on easy mode, or assisted, should I say, that their ability doesn't diminish. It's just that they again, that was another thing I found. Was it one bite took you from fine to caution, which seemed a lot even on normal mode.
Fine to danger on
it's a
hardcore.
balance thing too. Yeah, it's danger. Well, everything on hardcore is one hit gets you straight to danger. Doesn't matter what it is.
But that's fine on hard.
I was surprised they got rid of the mechanic when a crawling zombie grabs you and you could sort of shake it off and stamp on its head. You can't do that at all in this game.
I missed that.
Unfair moment is that you don't have the ability to. Yeah.
Batman, you were going to talk about your favourite zombie moment.
Yeah, it was in the library. It was just a small thing, but it made me laugh so much because one of them was coming right at me and I was in the middle of reloading, and the bit where they suddenly randomly start to sprint, and I thought, it's going to get me here, but then it just tripped over a body on the floor and landed right on its face. It was just brilliant. I just expected it to run right through it, but no, it tripped over and went down. It was brilliant.
Yeah, it's some great stuff when that happens. I actually use that as a trick in hardcore mode sometimes. If I know there's more zombies coming, I'll intentionally try and knock a zombie over so that it'll trip over the other one.
And can I say that the damage that you can do to a zombie, I mean, the gore, the slicing off the leg, off the limbs, it's absolutely brilliant. It's very satisfying. I started worrying myself about how much I enjoyed it, but there we go. It was... It's so realistic.
I'm going to spoil this for you guys in a little bit, unless you've seen the videos. But my favourite bit about that now is that if you unlock the rocket launcher, sometimes you shoot them and just kind of knocks them back, and it just like they leave a burning corpse that's kind of all burnt and mashed up, but it's not like dismembered or anything. It's not like the original. But occasionally, if you hit them right, like it'll knock them back, and there'll be just like a random leg left standing upright on the floor. Where
amazing.
Makes me laugh every time, like just random, like a leg, and I'm just like, that's brilliant. That's so good.
That's quite cool.
So funny.
Another thing I like, carry on talking about the BOWs in the RPD. My first the first encounter with the liquor was quite good because I think you're kind of semi-expecting, even though the demo didn't have it, you thought, they'll probably put it in for the original. You thought you'd count in the liquor corridor from the original. And they kind of pulled the whole kind of Cerberus thing from the remake, not having it jump through the window the first time, and therefore not having the liquor in the liquor corridor, but the one by the Stars office, I think it was where it turns up at the first time. I remember just being absolutely chased by the liquor, and they can outrun you, they can outjump you, and I was being absolutely brutal. And I ran into the room where that statue is, where the puzzle is, by the library, and I just heard the liquor slash the door, and for the rest of the game, that slash mark remained on the wall for me.
Yeah.
And I thought well, that's great. That's very personable to me. That's almost my story of the game. Someone else may have not got that, but that's just left its mark on the door, on the wall, and I really like that.
Well, that's the same with with bodies and enemies. They pretty much stay there for most of the game. Like the bodies don't disappear.
No. But talking of the liquors, I mean, if they do a remake of 3 and make the hunters as scary as they originally were, but on the same level of the liquors now, I mean, people aren't going to be able to sleep.
When we first started playing it, until we got the mechanics down, I said that I found the liquors the hardest enemy since the very original, as in the original hunters in the first game.
Yeah, no, I'd say that's a fair call.
Yeah, same. I would say that's a fair call, especially considering like the first time that I encountered them, I kind of was like, all right, okay, I'm just going to run, and it leaped past me and landed on the wall in front of me, and I'm like, holy shit, like, what the, like, oh my god, and then it leaped back off the wall at me, and I'm like, okay, this is insane, like I can't outrun them, like they're that hard. So yeah, I definitely agree. Until you realise how you can get around them, they're tough. But I think that's the balance. That's the balance. So essentially, if you screw it up as well, and that's the thing, you can try and walk past them, and it's exactly what Nick was talking about. If you walk into them or they walk into you, they will realise you're there, obviously, and they will attack, and then it doesn't matter. Like, and you can screw it up if you walk too fast or accidentally run or something. Like you can still screw it up, even knowing what you supposed to do. They can still be quite dangerous.
Did anyone else hesitate to set up the C4 on the 3rd floor storage room, thinking this is going to attract every fucking liquor in the entire building?
Do we really want to blow this up? And you knew something the shit was going to hit the fan afterwards. Just it was very scripted, but yeah, it was great. There's a moment I'll try and put it online at some point, but I've just started to work out how to actually capture things off my Xbox. I'm not very computer minded, but yes, I captured the moment where there's the two lickers in the kennels in the B scenario. They've my god. Was that tense?
That's just Claire's scenario.
Oh, is it just Claire's?
Yeah, Claire doesn't fight the dogs there. She gets lickers.
And Leon gets the dogs. Because they've changed the layout, obviously, downstairs in the basement, as opposed to what Leon needs to do in order to get back up on the east wing, as opposed to Claire going up through the chief's office.
Oh, okay. But yeah, I mean, I filmed it. Honestly, it's like a 10-minute record of me trying to sneak past two lickers in the kennels. Have a guess how it went.
You can take one easy guess.
And it's like I'm walking, and then I had that kind of moment where it stepped up, and then its tongue is they're huge. The tongues, aren't they? They kind of go licking around. And you're like, oh god, and then it decided just to walk into me, and I thought, no. And then I was like, oh, run. And yeah, brilliant. Absolutely brilliant. It's literally, for the first 5 minutes of the video, I'm just walking like a blooming, like a lemming, going, trying to move pixel by pixel just to see how far I can get. And then it does, that shift. Has it heard me?
You can do full walking speed, though, can't you?
Oh, can you? Oh,
yeah, you can do full walking speed.
All right. I probably made it go on for a bit longer.
But it's like what Rob says. The game makes you feel like you can't because of like their sudden movements where they like turn, and then I think it just. I mean, it's, as you say, it is a truly great mechanic because no matter how hard you rehearse it, even every now and then it makes you think, "Hey, that's fucking seen me, hasn't it?"
Yeah.
Or heard me.
Yeah, well, that's the thing. Like, even me knowing that I can walk around them when they do that erratic turn, I get a little bit uncomfortable about it. I'm still waiting, and occasionally I'll forget, and I'll hear the noise of them because they still make a screechy noise when they turn. They kind of almost just like a bark almost. It's like the closest thing I can equate to it is they turn and like make this noise, and even that still occasionally gets me because the noise is still freaky. The only thing about the lickers I miss is the breathing noise that the originals had. They don't have that now so much. But the claw sounds there, the claw thing's freaky as all hell as well, because even when they're dying, if you shoot them and they like on their back flipping and knocking their claws against the ground, if there's more than one in the room, you're still freaking out about the fact that you might have killed both of them. It's like, is there a third one? Is there another one in here that I've forgotten about? Like, because you can hear the click, 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 click of the claws on the ground.
I was a bit disappointed we didn't get a cool video like in the original game with a kind of chewing of the head.
Well, this is the one thing that I think is consistent about the game when it comes to those events, and this is kind of what we touched on a little bit with Mr. X, but it's also the same with like the liquor. So when you're in the B scenario and you go in and do the red jewel thing, the liquor falls through the skylight like it does in the original that you got a cutscene for. But it doesn't have a cutscene, you just hear it happen, and it happens behind you, and all of a sudden there's glass shattering everywhere and the liquor falling down from the ceiling, but you don't see it until you hear it, and that's it. And it's a bit of a shame, like it's a missed opportunity because it doesn't even happen with you in the ability to view it because of the choice of camera angles. So,
same with the interrogation room window.
Yeah,
it's the same jump scare, but you don't get the angle. Whereas
the one that does actually work surprisingly still well is when you're walking back along the hallway and Mr. X bashes through the corridor again from the press room.
Still not happened to me yet.
Oh, wow. But it doesn't yet.
I've had that. I had it
random. But it still works because you can see it in the camera angle. It works effectively because you're like, oh shit, I wasn't expecting that. And you see it. Like.
So do you think the Mr. X mechanic worked generally through the RPD? Because he certainly added a degree of added intensity, if you like, to everything that you were doing. You struggled to be able to properly go through the RPD at your own pace and go, I'll just wander here because of it. Do you think it was done at an appropriate level? Was it introduced too early in the B scenario?
No, I think
it was a nice balance.
Yeah,
I think it turns up. He turns up pretty late in the A scenario, doesn't he? Get pretty much everything done before he comes. He does turn up earlier in the B scenario, but again, I think the only disappointing thing about him really was there were certain save points. There were certain rooms you knew were safe for some reason. Like, there's no reason whatsoever why he shouldn't be able to come in the STARS office, for example. He can't go in the Chief's office. And once you work out what those rooms are, he does lose some of its effect, I think. think.
Definitely.
Chief's room makes sense because it's a save room.
Yeah, but you had that fantastic scene in the original where you're coming out of the art room as Claire down the corridor with the tiger, and he's just there. You know, there's no warning.
Yeah.
You just turn around the corner and he's there right in front of you, and the music kicks in. You don't get that in this one.
I will say, I still don't like his fucking hat, and I don't like his wrinkled face.
It is fun shooting it off though, and watching him trying to pick it up. It's great.
I've not actually. The only time I've knocked it off was when I hit him with a grenade or something. So I've not actually seen him trying to pick it up. That's hilarious.
I got the. I was delighted with the trophy to knock his hat off. But no, I've not seen him trying to pick it up. He must be British. He's got to be a British tyrant then. If he's. But I put my bowler hat back on.
I don't like the wrinkled face. I much prefer the smoother, more menacing looking face.
What was with all the random hats left around the station?
There was lots of hats, wasn't there?
There should be like a hidden achievement in that, shouldn't there? Like shoot. Maybe there is. Maybe we're yet to uncover. Everybody shoot the hats.
No, I'm still disappointed. There's not a hats on all enemies mode.
Well, understandably.
Very strange after all these years that they finally changed some of the herb design as well.
Yeah, each one was individual. Yeah. The actual different style of herb.
Talking of which, was it more of a pink herb than a red herb?
Yeah.
Yeah, it is actually. When you look at it, that's right. It's just a misnomer. Let's be here.
See, they've been playing Resident Evil Gate.
God.
Citywide T-virus outbreak. Where are my crows? I can't believe there's no crows in this game.
Yeah,
no crows, no spiders.
Yes, well, we'll come to that certainly because the sewer section, I felt, it lacked. Well, I think the game overall actually lacked quite a lot of BOWs. But anyway, before we get to the sewers, we've still got to talk about William Birkin and his appearance in the, I suppose, in the RPD-ish area under
it's a basement of the RPD. It's like a. It's like a sub-basement. It's like their electrical and sewer supply access to the building.
Yeah. So when a lot of the kind of like preview demos, not demos, but demonstrations were coming out, we saw people having a go at the Birkin boss fight. And I think there was a bit of disappointment. It seemed a bit generic, and I think we raised concerns in the last one about how that played out. When you got to fight Birkin for the first time, how did everyone feel about that?
I was devastated that his boss music wasn't there. Seriously, one of the highlights of fighting Birkin when I do a replay is that I find the music to Resident Evil 2 so fabulous that the Birkin boss fights are always a highlight. And when I didn't get it, it was a bit of a letdown.
There's literally only one piece of music that's in any of the Birkin fights that's anywhere close to the style of the original, which is the one for G3 in the labs. G4, no 3, yeah, the one with the 4 arms. They've got like a style that's all like a modern equivalent to it, and it's the only one in there that's similar. It's not that they even kept a consistent theme going to all of them like they did in the original.
With regards to the mechanics of the fight, though, I'd actually say it's a fine boss fight. I actually quite enjoyed boss fights this game. I will say to Cap, when you're promoing this game, just get some better people to do the initial previews and that, because obviously we didn't see who played the original previews, but they made that fight look stunted and awkward because they basically just let Birkin come and like hit them, and it looked like you almost had to take the hit. Now you actually know how agile you are, and that it's actually quite an easy fight to avoid any damage whatsoever. Again,
though, there were shades of Operation Raccoon City in the way he moves and how you fight him.
Yeah, I know.
Inherently, is that something of moving the Birkin fight to a 3D environment, though, like a 3D over-the-shoulder camera as opposed to a 2D fixed. This is my thought, because the more I think about it, like and you guys, I uploaded that video of again, it was the G3 fight. I think it's fun in and of itself, but it's definitely of its style. Like
I found it quite difficult. I think as the first boss goes, I think it was one of the more challenging ones, and I think in many ways it was more challenging than perhaps like G2 and the others. It was very cramped.
I don't know. I feel like the balance is right in that it allows you, like, if you play it when you're pre-planned, like you know it's going to happen, and you go, say, make sure you've got plenty of shotgun shells with Leon or flame rounds with Claire, it's very easy. But it's still doable even with just a bunch of handgun ammo that you're picking up around the area. Like, I haven't made it seem like it's an unwinnable battle that you can't just keep shooting at them. You have to avoid them for longer, but, you know.
It does have that risk, though, because I've been caught out once where I've just simply ran out of ammo, and because the walkway breaks, there's nowhere for you to go. If you're out of ammo, that's it. You've just got to let him kill you. That's the only...
the other part of it as well is that the damage quotient is high if you don't have any secondary sub-weapons equipped, grenades, flash grenades and stuff, and if he manages to grab you and you don't have one of those, then the amount of damage he does by grabbing your character's head and squeezing it is quite high. And so that part is problematic too if you don't have any or haven't picked up any from the environment or haven't got there in time. And,
there is a large emphasis on self-defense items, isn't there?
Yes,
and we'll get to this when we speak about the new IVs. But I enjoyed the Birkin battle. It's the first time I felt any real disappointment to it, and this is going to be a real sticking point of this episode when we get to it toward the end. Is when the fight repeated itself in the scenario B.
Yeah. Well, I think we'll cover most things we covered in it. Obviously, the B scenarios are so identical to A scenarios that we're kind of de facto covering them as we go. But then we'll have a separate section on the B scenario. I think anyway.
Did you guys like the fact that they took the 1.5 thing and actually had him speak a little bit?
To me, it makes sense. At that point where he's still slightly more human, it made more sense. It always had that idea of it. I never had any qualms with it. So them taking that and putting it in there is fine. If he kept doing it after that form, then maybe I would have been more problematic with it. But I mean, to be fair, there's almost sub forms in that form, because obviously when he starts, he's got a certain size to his shoulder, and the more you fight, it gets bigger and bigger. It's like G1A, G1B, and G1C almost before you finish the fight.
Well, I was pleased that the geography of the sewers made a lot more sense in this, and it flowed a bit better.
Like you said, Rob, the sub basement, the location wise, the Birkin fight made a lot more sense compared to the original. I think with the underground sewer passage. I like the way you go from that fight straight up into the car park of the RPD. That's another plus point to the design of the station, I think, because some rooms look vastly different and other rooms just look instantly recognisable, and the parking garage for the RPD was pretty much not identical, but more or less the same, wasn't it?
I almost want to say the way they've changed it makes more sense of improvement of layout. Like, compared to the original, the basement's probably the one area that's improved the most with its layout sensibility. It makes more sense. Having the cells completely to their own wing on one side, and having a shooting gallery and the morgue and the kennels and all that on the other side makes way more sense.
I'll truly miss the underground cavern with the stalagmites, will they?
Oh God, no.
Where Claire has her boss fight after Irons.
What did everyone think of Ben's reduced role?
I prefer Ben more as a very smart, well-dressed journalist than a hipster reporter.
Yeah, he's a bit of a jackass, wasn't he?
Well, he seems way more clueless in this version. That's definitely the part of it. Like, because obviously also Ada kind of recruits him to get information, and he fails miserably at that. Whereas in the original, he feels like he's actually got his finger on the pulse a little bit about what's actually going on before any of this is going on. And that it's literally he's the person who may have worked out in advance, and then that gives you justification as to why Irons would have put him in there. Whereas in this version, it's like he put himself there. I wasn't quite 100% sure. It's like if Irons is vindictive and manipulative as he is in this remake, then he wouldn't have locked Ben up. He just would have killed him. It doesn't make sense. Whereas in the original, that kind of made sense that he'd put him in there early before this outbreak had all happened, because he'd come. As soon as stuff had started happening in the city, Ben had immediately gone snooping around and got caught. Yeah, whereas this version doesn't feel like that.
It seems bizarre that you've got an Irons who would march police officers up to the attic and make them play a game of Saw, but wouldn't actually off the person who can basically out him and uncover all this dirt.
And likely too, the thing that also bugs me about that when it comes to Claire's scenario is that the fact that he has this ability to he takes Sherry but he just leaves Claire. At this point, considering what we know he's capable of, I'm amazed he just wouldn't have shot her in the head. What difference is it going to make?
Yes, there's a bit of tonal inconsistencies there, and I actually didn't like the way they changed Irons in this at all. No. Taking out the stupid is the file about taxidermy on the tiger, but even taking that out. I don't know. There was something about the way it didn't feel. He looked too old, and I just didn't believe him as much as the old one. And
I had this disagreement. You guys, of course, had this disagreement with Mr. Spencer once about the tonal shift of the character and his manipulation and his power play within the role of what was going on in the city. In the original version, it felt like he was implicit and involved for personal gain, directly level. Like, he knew that he was being used by Burke and Umbrella, but at the same time, he's like, well, I'm going to turn lemons into lemonade, and I'm going to use this for my own ends. The version in the remake does not feel like that character. He feels like he is just a sadistic bastard who somehow has managed to become police chief, and the connection to Umbrella is completely secondary to the point of his character. Like, it wouldn't make any difference to him otherwise to change his character type.
Yeah, I don't like his characterization at all. I think they go way too hard to make him, like, even just things like the file where, we know he's a rapist, and so one of the things that the pamphlets that you read, he helps abuse victims. It's like, come on, that's so. And he do a program which protects endangered species or something?
Yeah.
It's just so layered on, so heavy. It's just ridiculous. Whereas
trying too hard.
Yeah. Whereas who'd have thought? And I think I said this on Twitter. I may have even said it on the last podcast. So apologies for repeating myself. Who'd have thought the rendition in the original game was the more subtle of the two?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, I think he was probably the worst done of the side characters.
And it amounts to nothing as well. I thought we were going to get a massive, really massive set piece with him, and short of the little chase sequence you get in the orphanage, which really doesn't amount to anything, he's offed really, really inconsequently. Whereas his death in the original felt like quite a big moment. In this, it's just he's dead.
That's the thing that I think the one area that I'm conflicted the most about is that orphanage section, and it's part of it is Irons. I think tonally it's really good. I think seeing this whole backstory, and I think you guys might agree with this, and we're talking about this in regards to say something like Survivor, where obviously they're using these children as test subjects. That's kind of cool. I was like, wow, okay, they're going there. That's awesome. But it's glossed over in Irons because of his diminished characterization. Like, if his character was more in tune with the original, and then they'd add this creepiness factor of him being in charge of this orphanage and offering these children up as test subjects for Umbrella, okay, would have been totally on board with that. But it's because you're already trying too hard to make him creepy as it is an individual, and then you add that element on top. It's like, I think I appreciate the Sherry chase sequence in there more. Like, it's more suitable than her version of the scene in the sewer section or the early pre-sewer section in the original game. It's tonally a really cool event, and I do like that whole bit with Claire afterwards getting there on the streets that we've kind of a little bit touched on, that it feels a little bit close to the original getting through the streets in the original game.
I think in Remake 2 he plays a typical Umbrella psychopath. Fine, but in Remake in the original he is believable as a chief as well. And just take Claire's first encounter with him. Whoa, calm down there, Chief. She's trying to help him. Whereas here it's like, it's just not going to happen, is it? You don't believe that he could be the chief of police.
I was just going to say the genius of his original characterization was that the original game almost played out that you're supposed to feel sorry for him until you get the twist where he is revealed to be this big villain. Like the actual initial scene you get with Claire in the original game, you actually maybe do feel a little bit sorry for him. He seems to be completely in on his head, and he seems to feel remorse to everything that's gone on, and he sort of muses over taxidermy in a way that's not obvious.
Yeah, sure, and this is exactly where I was going to go with this as well, is that the other part of it is it feels like even afterwards, when you reflectively look back on it, you look at this character who, he had something wrong with him, but it's almost like the events of what's happened in Raccoon City has been that, needle in the haystack, kind of the straw that broke the camel's back on his mental stability. This event has pushed him over the edge. That he's indulging in on these things because he doesn't see at this point the consequences don't matter anymore, and that is completely gone in the remake too. That he's already a fully formed crazy character because, as you pointed out earlier, they've gone way too much on the overreach of trying to explain the anti-subtleties to his role. He's protecting animals and looking after children, and realistically what he's actually doing is
giving away children for scientific experience and would be gladly, happily slaughtering animals left, right, and centre if he could.
And it's strange because, as I said, I think most of the side characters were actually really, really well done. And something I was just speaking to Rob off air was, and it kind of shifts us slightly out of the RPD into towards the sewer section in Leon's campaign, where you get to meet Kendo and his poor daughter. I thought that was easily the best kind of cinematic, emotional moment in the entire game. It was. Oh, I thought it was really well acted.
Sounds like this might be controversial.
Yeah.
Okay.
And I thought, oh my god, they're actually going. First, I thought they were going to zombie children, and especially
I'm
at that
still
point,
disappointed they didn't. You had the orphanage. I'm sorry.
Yeah, you knew it was coming up, and I thought, zombie children, it's coming. But I just thought it was so well done with the kind of dad. She was kind of half in, half out, and she was like, "Just leave me alone. I just want to be home." It really resonated, and I just thought it was one of the best, along with kind of Marvin at the beginning. I thought it absolutely hit it on the head. But that's just me. Sean, you seem to disagree with that.
I really love the ambition of it. I do, and I think it's a well done scene for this series. But again, when I compare it against its peers. And I think the game it's most tried to be like is sequences in The Last of Us. And I think in terms of like presentation and acting and everything, I don't think it holds a candle to The Last of Us, unfortunately. I appreciate the ambition of it, I really, really do. And I like the fact that they tried to do more with Kendo. And it is, fucking hell, it is a tragic storyline and it's done really well. But I think they tried too hard to be... I think they've tried to make Resident Evil... I think they tried too hard in that bit to make Resident Evil... more like The Last of Us, if you know what I mean.
I see where you're going, but I don't agree. And in the sense that, and this is what I said to Nick, in the sense that it's very hard. The problem that the remake has consistently, and this goes back to one of the first things that we talked about right at the start, this is about the characterization and about how cold some of the characters feel. And that's a problem that this game has across the board. And it's like the one time in that game where you actually start to see empathy between characters and you actually start to think about the fact that there are actually people in the city that have died who never deserved it, and that people are actually empathizing. But it's so undercut by the exact next scene, which is also what I said to Nick, which is that Ada ends up explaining to Leon about Umbrella, and Leon... it's like it doesn't register to him. It's like, I've seen, there's a really bad line reading in there which doesn't help, which is about him. Oh, that explains all these monsters I've been dealing with. Yeah. But he's way too positive about it. But it also undercuts the fact that Umbrella is supposed to be this massive company, and all of a sudden it acts like he's never heard of it before in his entire life. And it's like, and Nick made this point to me as well. It's like, it's like you'd think that you would immediately, it'd be like Procter & Gamble or Johnson & Johnson turning around and making bioweapons. You would know what the company is, and you'd go, what? There's a pharmaceutical company making he acts not only just naive, but completely stupidly. Yeah. And it undercuts the fact that all these people in the city have just dealt through these consequences. And so for me, I can get the idea that, maybe it's trying to be a little bit like Last of Us, but it's not in a bad way. And it's not that it's not the most affecting of what are the scenes in that game because of that fact. Because it actually makes you think about the consequences of the damage that this has done to the city for the first proper time.
I definitely got that actually walking around the orphanage. I actually thought how, it really got me on that. I actually took it at heartstring, just like walking around, like the empty cots and seeing like the cuddly toys and things like that. And I just thought, you're actually seeing like a real impact on human life that this catastrophe has had in a way that I don't think we really have before. These are fucking children that have died now. And okay, the game does not go there in terms of detail or visuals or anything like that, but it's just bad enough just seeing like an empty orphanage. And thankfully they don't coat the walls with blood or anything like that. It's actually quite tastefully done. But it's still enough, to just see this place that should be happy and full of life is actually empty and vacant. And that's one thing I think the orphanage section did really well.
Oh, I'm gonna put this out there because of the fact that we talked about it earlier, but also so you were talking about the fact that obviously there's no dungeon torture, room or area where he does his taxidermy under the RPD. Instead, they've shifted that to the orphanage. To me, that's almost worse Like,
Yeah.
it's his, instead of him having a director's office there, because obviously he's the director of the orphanage, and also there's the fact that this wasn't the original orphanage. If you read the files and what's been going on, this has been a relocated orphanage because, and this is the file that most people overlook. It's hidden in the room where, when you arrive, it's clear. If you go up to the room where he unlocked, where he was washing his face, there's a file in there which basically explains that a bunch of quote-unquote test subjects managed to escape. And there's obviously this whole thing about the orphanage moving because of the fact that test subjects were escaping and all this sort of carry on. Like, it just doesn't make sense to me, this whole room with his taxidermy space. And, like, obviously, that's just weird. I don't think they thought that out very well either. And it's just a means to an end to continue to keep that original thing. Whereas if it would have made more sense if it was still in a basement again, underneath the orphanage where you end up going anyway. Yeah.
Practically, he's just done his tiger, and he's going to lug it through the orphanage, along the high street, through the RPD main door. Don't mind me, just carrying a Bengal tiger on my shoulder.
Oh, come on, Nick. What he does is he puts it in an item box and then pulls it out of the RPD.
It just doesn't. I don't know. That still doesn't sit well with me. I love as I said to you before, I love the idea that he's been offering up children as test subjects. I think that's nefariously creepy enough, and it goes along with our lines of how we've felt about other enemies in the series, kind of, using people off the street and all this sort of stuff. Yeah. There's a nefarious means to that in itself is crazy, and it's kind of but it's surrounded by too much effort trying to make him seem like a crazy, creepy person. Sorry. Continue.
I was going to move on to Ada because that's an obvious.
That's exactly where I was going to go. Shall we go down the Ada route and the sewer entrance with the Gator?
Right, yes, okay. With the game.
May I?
Some can of worms. Yes, you may.
Straight out the bat, I think they get Ada completely wrong in this game.
Really?
Yeah, I do. I think they make her into a real unlikable bitch, and I just don't think that works for. I think she's deliberately being a bitch, but I just don't think it works for her character. I think it works more. The original, straight away, she's obviously quite resistant to Leon in the original, but she does it in a way that he's almost like enthralled by her, like he wants to get to know her and find out what she's about. In this, she's just so unlikable that you can't. Like in the original, she uses these relationships to get what she wants, whereas in this, the journey that Leon goes down to start to work with her is just completely implausible. Like there's just no way you would want to. Because all she does is just push him away. Whereas in the original, she gives him just enough to like keep him on a leash, just to keep him interested.
String him along, yeah.
Yeah, and she just throws a cheap kiss in this, which I think is more fan service than it is anything else. And it's just like by the end of the game, in the original, when like Leon goes to the control panel of the train and he says goodbye, Ada, you really get the impression that he's been on this journey with her and he's genuinely like sad to see her go. Whereas in the remake, you just get this throwaway, can't believe I miss her, and then he throws away the only sort of trophy, or not trophy, that's the wrong word, Jesus, cut that bit out.
Memento.
Memento, that's it. That he has of her. So it's like he just doesn't even care this time. And it just doesn't feel like this is the foundation that is going to define this relationship for like the next 20, 15 years of their lives. Whether in the building in Resident Evil 6 looking longingly across the city at each other, that felt earned by that point.
Well, it's the Ross Rachel of Resident Evil, isn't it?
In this, she's just so unlikable. she's just Ada was Ada's one of my favourite things in this series, and to just see her done like this was a little bit heartbreaking. I'm not going to lie.
So I was going to say, because on that note, I'm with you guys. I'm conflicted because I think her look and her style, acting wise, is good. I think as a sub character, like she's well performed and that has the right look and the right tone. But it's the way that the character is written, which is the thing that you guys are talking about, having the problem with, and how that plays out as a relationship that I also had issues with. So I feel completely conflicted because I feel like they had the opportunity to have the character so perfectly right here, and yet just like a lot of things, it doesn't go the way you expect it to.
I'm with you on the unlikability factor, because the first time I played it, and as they were walking up towards the gun shop, I was like, well, Leon hasn't got a radio to contact Claire. He's met Ada for all of 10 minutes. She's been a right bitch to him. Why on earth is he willing to leave the police station and leave Claire behind and just seemingly go off with this woman? You know, it just doesn't make any sense. But that
am I right in remembering as well, aside from the fact that when he leaves with Ada in the original, he does radio clear and tells her that he may have found a way out? This is what I'm remembering. Is that this is correct?
Yeah. Let me come back to this later as well.
In the original. But on the other side, though, I really enjoyed the banter between them as they were walking down the sewers. You know, with Leon asking questions about Umbrella and asking how they could be in control of the sewers without the authorities knowing. I liked that. That was cool.
This is what I mean. Like, I think acting wise, generally it worked. There was a back and forth that kind of worked there, occasional wonky line reading aside. But as I said before as well, and I just don't understand why Leon seems. It's almost like naivety beyond naivety. Like, there's a certain level where you of outside character expectations that, as I said, like Umbrella obviously is a huge multinational corporation. And yet, Leon acts as if he's never heard of the damn thing before. Like, it's incongruent with what we're witnessing.
As he walks past a giant Umbrella advert.
Advert
on the wall.
No less. Exactly. It's like, and that was another big issue I had with just in the environment in the area, is this giant fucking sinkhole / street opening that they've decided to put in for some. Why? What's the point of that?
Very Silent Hill-esque, wasn't it? It suddenly felt quite linear and kind of like, oh, okay, can't go that way, that type of thing. But with Ada, I mean, we'll talk about her actual scenario part. The way they use the kind of photo symmetry of the voices, I've always had an issue with RE7. I don't think they get the mouth quite right. I always find on all these characters the way the mouth moves seems a bit over exaggerated. I think if you watch like the opening bit of like Mia in Resident Evil 7, there's something off about it, and I don't know. I can only put it down to the kind of mouth, and I think Claire's a bit like that in this one, and Leon and Ada. And
for a video game character, though, Ada is breathtakingly beautiful.
Absolutely, she's hot. But Ada's actual playable section I thought was one of the worst parts of the game, and that includes Sherry's little mini section, which I didn't enjoy much either.
Before you even get to that, there's the Gator chase.
Oh, of course, yes.
Which, like, I kind of remember the whole publicity was like, oh, we had to work out a way to keep it in there because it's kind of iconic, blah, blah, blah. To be quite honest, I would have been happy for them to drop it.
Yeah, I hated it. I think it purely came across that they were forced to put it in there. It's a blink and you miss it moment. I really didn't like it. I wish they'd cut it.
I almost think it was a late edition, I almost think it was like they saw the feedback and thought, oh God, we really ought to put this in. And they just came up with something that felt like it honestly came out of Resident Evil 6.
That camera change. Fuck that camera perspective. I hate it. That ruined my first run. I died about 6 times trying to get the hang of that fucking thing.
But it's just a really shitty pattern too. It's a run to one side, run to the opposite side, run very quickly to the opposite side again, run very quickly to the opposite side so you don't get bitten, and then that's the end of the thing. Shoot the gas pipe.
Yeah.
Pointless. The original it served the purpose of being a blockade in a hallway that you needed to access the rubbish area. And thus it's irrelevant to the whole section. You can just go straight into the sewers and arrive in the sewers and go to the scene with Annette, and it wouldn't have made any difference.
In the original, it felt like an awesome, empowering moment, though. Like the first time you ever played that and you worked out what you needed to do, it was like really cool. And I know it's obvious and it's not difficult. But you think the first time you're playing that, this is before the era of YouTube, of guides or anything like that. We're talking about 22 years ago, 21 years ago. You had to work that out yourself. Most people didn't even know you could knock the canister down.
And the satisfaction of taking out a boss with one handgun bullet, you're like, yeah,
it was ace.
It's good.
There's no celebration to it.
Take that, you slimy son, bitch. That's what he says, isn't it? Something stupid.
Something like that, yeah. Very similar. Yeah, and then Ada's section following it up.
Well, I was suddenly playing Batman Arkham Asylum, wasn't I?
It's rubbish, isn't it? It really is rubbish.
I didn't mind. Yeah, I like the interaction between her and Annette. I think though this, Ada getting sassy about being like that when she gets out of the incinerator is actually pretty funny. And like her comment when like the security card says you have to return by October 1st, and she's like, not going to happen. I thought they were cool. That was alright.
I thought the actual dialogue moment between them though before Ada gets knocked off the gantry is painful. I'll go take G for myself over my dead body. Oh. Have we not come
that
so
moment
far?
In the original plays off of the fact of like Ada's been trying to find this information about Annette, and then this is the other incongruent part I hate, and it's kind of going back to that section with Leon, is that basically Ada's constantly just blaming Annette as if Annette's the constant problem. Nothing to do with her husband, nothing to do with the research, nothing to do with Umbrella in general so much. She talks about Umbrella as a company, but she doesn't blame them. She blames Annette directly. Yeah, and it's like... What
is it she actually compares to Annette and then says Annette's worse? It's the alligator, isn't it?
Because Leon complains that she had told him that the virus turns people into monsters, but he was like, well, that wasn't a person, and then basically she tries to say it wasn't as bad as Annette. I'm like, actually, no, the gator is definitely worse than Annette. Like, let's be honest. Like,
but yeah, it's.
But yeah. I don't know how many times I died when Tyrant turns up with Ada. I struggled so much with that part.
I did the complete opposite. I was like, well, that was completely pointless. He turns up, and I'm already in the middle of trying to find the door access way. So I'm like, okay, cool, open the door. And then just because I've been taught so much by this section, there's a switch. There's going to be a switch on the other side of the door. I know it. And I look straight on the wall, and immediately right above it, the power I've just put up, there's a switch. I do that, and it leads straight to the fan. I was like, cool, fan. And I was through the first time even before he got into the room.
Yeah.
Oh, okay, well, I failed.
The opposite for me, because I've been paying attention to the gameplay. It was so consistently repetitive. The first bit is like, hit a thing, then open a fan. Hit a thing, open a fan. Hit a switch, use the lift. Hit a switch, open the door. Hit a switch, go use the fan. Like it's repetitively consistent. So of course it didn't bother me. It made Mr. X turning up pointless.
And that sequence.
I was just going to quickly say, have you tried doing it without the hood on? It's painful. It's painful because you can't see. You can see the switches through the wall, obviously, but without your little aiming marker, it's impossible to find them. It really is a pain in the arse without the hood. That section, I don't recommend it.
I will say, of all, the game is repetitive enough because you don't get the A/B scenario split. You're essentially playing the same game 4 times across all 4 modes, barring a few changes.
Barring a few changes, character specific or puzzle answer differences.
But that Ada section is one of the areas which really does not hold up to repeat playing. It's an absolute chore.
It's nice and short, thank God.
Yeah.
Yeah, I found it the worst part, and I didn't enjoy the Sherry section much, but
at least with the Sherry section, I got a kick out of the fact that it was a new environment. There's some nice bit of lore in there. Some actually quite juicy Survivor-esque lore in there.
It's almost the antithesis. I want to say in the original version, Ada doing that section pre-sewers was more sensible than the version in this, and the bit with Sherry doing it was not very good, and you're having to move the crates and all that sort of stuff, and she's fucking struggling. Compared to this is much better. I think her throwing the glass at irons and stuff is a much better story beat than, so it's almost the opposite here. Like, it's weird. Yeah, it would have made more sense to have a section with Ada that made better use of her character without having to have the stupid Arkham-esque see-through walls, thing.
And what is it?
She some puzzles.
She says something really painful when she whips it out as well, doesn't she? That gadget for the first time.
My new toy. It's just something like that.
Oh god,
it's secret weapon time.
It's so awful.
All right, well, we'll move on to better things because we've now entered into the sewers, and I was really pleased with the sewers being actually a bit of a hub area as well. Normally, sewer sections in the games you just kind of come and go. This, I like the look. I thought it was. I like the fact that every time you got into the sewer, you went, "Oh, the smell," that kind of thing. I think that played off quite nicely. And my disappointment came from the lack of BOWs, the lack of roaches, kind of cockroaches, the lack of spiders. I think spiders are synonymous with underground catacomb-esque areas in all the games. And I was very disappointed that we didn't have spiders. Imagine how creepy they would have been.
I didn't mind the lack of. I didn't mind the lack of cockroaches because the cockroaches in the original were like the hardest enemy in the entire fucking game.
Well, they were there.
Especially yeah, they're there. It's not they're not there. They're just not in that fan. They're not attacking Ada. Because I remember when you played as Sherry, that was the easiest place to get killed because they would they'd stun lock you. You couldn't get out of getting killed because they would hit you and you try to move and you get hit by another one and you just couldn't move and you die. And then I remember trying to play that game and with no saves, and that was the bit that I dreaded the most. Was being killed by cockroaches. So I don't miss those, but the spiders are a shame. But then, to be fair, what they've done in the sewers in this and what they've replaced it with, I'm okay with too as a good replacement. I think the G monster hive and all that's pretty cool. So
let's talk about the G's. Go on then.
I thought that was a really good addition, because it makes perfect sense. Because if Birkin's wandering around the sewers trying to impregnate people, look for a suitable host for a G embryo, it stands to reason there's going to be a lot more than one G creature that you see in the original game. So the fact that they've made like a little nest down in the sewers was a really, really clever little addition, I thought. Maybe a bit too on the nose with the sort of alien chestburster things. But
more so than the original.
Yeah, but the idea behind it was good and it made sense in my eyes.
It's really creepy when the G creature's hand emerges out of the water to try and get you. It's really creepy. Well done.
I thought it was a good level of difficulty, challenge, and amount of hits they take. I think they got the balance quite right. Don't get too close. Make sure you've got a defensive item on, because then you have all sorts of problems. And the kind of the poison that they give off. But you can take them down. But if you don't plan it, you're going to be in trouble. And I thought they worked quite well. And I would actively avoid areas. I think I remember running up one waterway, and then one came out. I said, "Nope, I'm not going that way." And I just to save on the ammo, which is what all good survival horror games should do, because they take a lot of ammo, but enough ammo for their
size.
Yes.
But before, so this is the thing. Before when you were talking about the hub area, and I kind of groaned, it was more to do with the fact that what really bothers me about the sewer section is that the overcomplication of the chess puzzle is pointless. It's when you come to replaying the game several times over, that whole section becomes almost worse than just the Ada section for like repetitive annoyance. The puzzle where you have to go and switch the queen and rook king pieces around.
Yeah,
it's just repetitively annoying. It's frustratingly slow, and you know what the answer is. It doesn't make the game any better. And then you have to go through the whole G basically area just to get to it, and it's just frustrating. The more you do it, the more I realise that whole section is just annoyingly planned. It doesn't have the same flow that the original had, which is that these paths, it's linear in some respects, it is not a hub area. The path at which Leon and Claire appear into the sewers and the path at which they take in order to get to the cable car in both the A and B scenarios kind of work better and conclusively with the lift changes in the different rooms than the hub area in the remake, when it comes to having to do it so many times. Because again, much like the rest of the game, it's the same in both A, B, first and second scenarios.
The chess thing felt really tacked on as a homage as well, didn't it?
Yeah.
That silly fail you get about, what was it, Knights Construction Company or something, run by world's honorary chef members of whatever.
Trying to justify more the reason for having the chess piece keys, yeah.
That's and now was the original story of someone getting infected who likes chess.
And also the idea that the key was a chessboard, now like just a series of switches with chess puzzle pieces. They might as well not be chess puzzle pieces anymore, other than the requirement to have that reference to the original. They could have been 6 different keys. It could have been a different lock. Why is it again? Just it takes up inventory space for the sake of inventory space.
I've got to give the game a shout out though. How nice is it to play a modern Resident Evil with fucking puzzles again?
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah. I was going to bring that up a bit later.
Complaining as I am about that, the puzzles, it is nice to have puzzles. It's nice to have, like, I have no problems with having the 3 quests in the RPG. I have no problems with actually having to write notes and take
yes.
and all that sort of stuff. Don't get me wrong. That's kind of my issue with the chess one. Is it doesn't require that. It's just literally it's fetch questing for the sake of fetch questing. Pick up these 2 pieces and then you have to work out where they go. Sure, but it's not the same. It's I could do that puzzle with the pieces already there, and it would still be that puzzle.
I will say, just quickly going back to the getting the medals in the initial puzzle. I much preferred the notebook you got in the demo, which wasn't quite as clear in the order you had to put the things in. Whereas
I'm guessing that was player testing feedback.
Yeah, in the finished game, it actually just tells you what you need to do.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. But yeah, you're right. It was so good to get a bit of paper out, especially for the personal safe codes.
Do people really struggle with them? Because I think they're so easy.
I just had to write down, and I just did numbers 1 to 9 or whatnot, and I was just getting off.
You know how we've talked about this before, but the puzzles that are in the games, and you never forget the code numbers or whatever in the future. And for this game, I'm never going to forget Leon's desk. It's Ned and Marge. It's easy to remember. It's just like, okay. And my friend was watching me, and I made the comment about the fact it says Ned and Marge, M-R-G, and he's just like, does the S and the Leon stand for Simpson?
Just quickly jumping forward on that subject. The symbol codes in the lab, do they change every time you play it?
Yes, they do.
I thought they fucking did, because I had them. I took a photo on my phone, and they didn't work.
No, they change them in the A and B scenarios, but they don't change.
They don't change. Right, okay.
They don't change. So if you play the A scenario on either character, they're the same, and the same with B scenario, they're the same. They just change between A and B scenarios. But you can play the Clear A or Leon A, and they'll be exactly the same. There's between them. There's 4 different codes, and there's 2, one for the floor panel, one for the lab shutter case for the.
Yeah. Do not get me started on the B scenario V-Jolt thing. Bloody hell. I was close to rage quitting the entire game. The first one, A scenario, that worked. That was fine. I have no idea how I did the B scenario. I was watching YouTube videos. I was like, it's like a 29 move sequence.
No, it's not. No, it's not. If you work it out, it's more than the A. It's more than the A set, but it's not more than 10. It's not that
achievement, don't you? If you do it in a certain amount of moves.
The in-game, there's an in-game.
Is there? Oh my god!
There's the in-game list that's bigger than the actual trophy achievement list, and then it's like 79 items.
It's the same for the control panel puzzles. If you do them in less than certain moves, you'll unlock some concept art or something.
I was just going to say, I think it's nice overall. Like the puzzles in this game, a lot of them were optional. You can tell the game is catered towards speedrunners, like Capcom said, because you can skip a lot of the puzzles in the RPD in particular. You don't have to pick up the red jewel in the box to get the stars USB if you don't want to. What else
enough, though, you say that, but actually you can still achieve a pretty fast time even if you do. Because I've had to get the S plus ranks, and I still want the firepower in hardcore mode, and I'm still doing the sub runs in under 2.5 hours, and I'm not even a speedrunner. So if I actually knew what the fuck I was doing, like speed wise, I could probably get sub 2 hour times,
And even the precinct keys, you don't really have to get the diamond key, do you? I don't think, unless you're obsessive.
No. There's a few.
You have to get the diamond key in clear scenario because you have to use it to get up to the chief's office. I think you still have to get all the keys at some point, but the diamond key you only have to use for one actual door in both scenarios.
And that's the thing I remember going back to that bit. I remember going, the linen room I think was one key, and I was like, do I need to go in the linen room because it's right by liquors? And I was like.
That's easy to get into because even if the liquor's in there, the liquor's around by the stars door, so you can run straight in from the library side and run straight to the door, and then you get close to you.
Yes, but I don't know that. I didn't know that.
Not a problem. I mean, you can walk in anyway, and it wouldn't even come close to you. But you could run straight for the door, and it's not even close, and it doesn't come around and wait out there for you or anything like that.
Yeah.
It's the same. The personal safes that you have to unlock, those are semi-random. I think there's only so many code combinations between them, but it gets jumbled every time you play it. They're optional as well. You don't have to unlock everything in those lockers. But if you want the extra items or the item space, because there's always obviously a bag for more storage.
Can I go back? Anything else anyone wants to comment about the sewers? So we've dredged upon the sewers because there's no real big boss battle. Oh, of course, Birkin G2.
Yeah, I was going to say. So Birkin's battle is my least favourite part of the entire game, without question. It is the most. All the other boss battles in the entire game are actual fights. This one is basically just a case of avoid him, shoot him in the back so that he knocks himself down to his knee, throw the crane. And if you hit him enough damage, you can do it in one shot. If you don't, you have to do it twice. It is not a fight. It is just literally a puzzle, and not a good puzzle at that either. And it's not fun. It's not enjoyable. It's pointless.
If he grabs you, even with a self-defense item, you haven't got enough time if the container's on a return journey
to get out. Yeah,
and it's just a cheap one shot.
It's cheap. Yeah, it's terrible. It's not fun. And the fight beforehand when he's putting his arm through the ceiling, great callback to the cable car fight in the cable car ride in the original, but completely avoidable. If you stand over on the left side of the room by there's like 2 aircon fans, you can stay there who can't even hit.
Oh right.
It's so pointless. Yeah. There are people who always complaining I'm always getting hit by him. Just stand there. Right to the left of the shutter door that he opens. And then once you hear him roar and move to the shutter door, stand to the left side of the shutter door, he rips the thing from right to left, you can run straight past him. Not even get hit. Pointless. Absolutely pointless.
So Rob's sounding like a pro speedrunner here. He's got all the tactics down, hasn't he?
I've had to play that section so many times because the thing was, when I was doing the S thing, you can only save 3 times. I'd save before each of the Birkin fights. And of course, the bit that I died the most on was between after that fight in the labs, usually. And we know why this is because we'll get to that eventually. And so I would have to repeat this whole boss fight every time. And it was so pointless. It was so frustrating. I didn't like it to begin with. I hated it more by having to play it so many times.
As you say, it wasn't really a boss fight as such. And again, if you don't know, you think it is a boss fight. And again, I think on my first time, I must have wasted so much ammo on it because you're thinking, in the kind of not corridor bit, but the bit before you get to the where the crate is. You can battle him. I was shooting him acid rounds, like go like that. And second time, I was like, "There's no point in me doing this. I'll just lure him down, run straight." Yeah, exactly. And it's like, oh. And then of course he lingers at the top, so you can easily shoot off enough ammo for him that only needs a couple of like a handgun ammo, and then he'll fall to his knees and you can knock him off. Yeah. He lasts long enough.
The easiest thing, as I said, like the whole point is the easiest way to drag him to his knees. You don't even have to hit him more than once. You can literally just have to juke around him until you can see his back, shoot the eye on his back, and he drops straight to his knee.
Yeah,
that's not even a fight. It is literally just I'm looking for the blatant weak point on his back, and if it's one shot, and you just do that twice. Obviously, if you do that with the crane, then that kills him. You don't even need to waste ammo on him. It's pointless.
So. An interesting point, my founding Project Umbrella member, Chimera, was in contact. He got the game a bit later than us, and he was... I was asking him how he's getting on, and a bit like us, he loved the RPD section. He felt the game went tumbling downhill after the RPD section, and I think there's parts of the sewers that were really good, and parts of the sewers, as you said, the Birkin boss fight, didn't leave the section on a good note, and I personally don't like the lab section at all, and the whole build up to it was very anticlimactic.
I'm not a fan of the new cable car. I don't like the lack of the marshalling yard. The equivalent to the marshalling yard is the crane section that the Birkin fights in, because if you look, not that you've got a lot of time to look during the fight, but afterwards, it's an open pit basically. There's a sky box, above. It just doesn't have like a skyline. But what this giant actual construction actually is, I have no idea. Some construction, but
that's just the thing with the geography of the whole game, though, isn't it? It's just the lab, the sewers, and the station are just vertically stacked.
Pretty much.
Whereas you got like the feeling of a journey in Resident Evil 2. By the time you got to the marshalling yard, it felt like you'd actually come quite far from the RPD.
And I just didn't like the fact that it's like, you get on this cable car, which is in the technically public sewers, And it's like, this lab is for Nest, the secret umbrella laboratory. Please, please don't
3 random locked doors.
So please don't tell anyone as we leave.
Well, you need a visitor. You need your stolen visitor's key. That only work till October 1st.
Horrible visions of either Paul Anderson's lab or Operation Raccoon City lab.
I think the lab, when you're in the lab, it feels as far away from Resident Evil 2 as Resident Evil 6 did from the original. No, it's not a bad section, and if it was an original game, if it was Resident Evil 8's lab, I'd actually really quite like it. But because I know where it's come from and I know the heritage, it just feels absolutely ridiculous to me. It feels like it's been designed by the guy who did the Resident Evil 5 lab, the big Tricell facility in Africa. It just feels...
Which was accurate because it was more modern. This thing doesn't feel like a lab that exists in 1998.
By the time you come out of that cable car, it feels like you've literally jumped forward 30 years because there's flat screens on all the doors and all the doors are electric, and you know the lab in the original Resident Evil 2 to me felt very, very realistic in terms of the setting of that game. It felt like it was this secret facility with narrow corridors and things like that, and there was an open sort of area where you put the fuse in and that, but it's still quite small really. When you see this vast cavernous expanse open up in front of you, you just think, this is absolutely ridiculous. Like, literally, how big must this chasm underneath the city be? Whereas,
how could anyone not know about this giant chasm that was built? Because obviously this lab can't be more than a few years old because it's so brand new. Whereas it felt like an slightly lived in lab, and obviously by the old timeline, that lab existed in the late 80s, I'm guessing, if I remember correctly. So by that point, the lab's about 10 years old. This one feels like it was built 6 months earlier. Like, it doesn't feel like the G-Virus research.
Shiny walls and electronic walkways and, you know, the Paul Anderson lab voice. Welcome, Dr. Lee.
The Umbrella logo doesn't even match the style of the Umbrella logo. Consistent to the time or the advertising. It's like a modern typeface.
It is inspired by Paul Anderson.
It is. But I mean, gentlemen, we have to look at it. We need to look at it almost with a fresh pair of eyes, because we are comparing, and we shouldn't necessarily compare. And this is where I still think it does fail, as you said, from an aesthetic point of view. The fact that there is the things like the flat screen TVs, which this is 1998, and the game's done such a good job of still feeling within that era up to that point.
With the exception of the USB.
Yeah, with it.
Come on, they weren't little thumb drives like that back in 1998.
No.
Well, that's not entirely true. USB flash drives existed, and like USB as an actual connector port has been around since the mid-90s. They weren't very utilized, but they did exist. Yeah, and so I could believe that a particular type of flash drive would, it's more believable than the number of flat screen televisions
and the electronic voice and the modern email apps that they've got.
The actual drives themselves, it is slightly predating an actual existence. They didn't exist until about 2001 or something like that. But it's a believable. The USB as a format existed at the time, so it's not too much of a stretch. Whereas the flat screen panels and the RFD chips that are in the for security stuff are probably a little bit too much of a stretch.
It's even just like I say, it's even just the emails and things like that. You know, I remember Windows 98, guys. Come on.
Yeah.
Outlook Express.
I think what annoyed me most was the fact that it was a good-looking lab in the sense that it had everything that we've never seen a lab like this in Resident Evil really before. A proper working, coherent lab. You know, it had sleeping sections because the people were working overnight. It had
and like a
toilet,
the cafeteria that makes sense. Like those bits all work really well. I think those bits are good.
Let me say,
they could have been additional to the original lab layout.
If this was a new Resident Evil, if this was Revelations 3 and it was set in an entirely new facility and this was the lab, I'd say it's actually a really well designed and well put together sequence. But as a remake of Resident Evil 2, just no.
Yeah, so that's the difference. You've got to look at it. But I think even looking at it with a completely, I've never played Resident Evil before, the presence of 20 Olympic-sized swimming pools in a greenhouse that Poison Ivy would be proud of. It seemed that in itself seemed very out of place, and whereas I think again I shouldn't compare, but I think the plants come a bit left field in my opinion. Whereas I think in the original, you feel that the plants have been accidentally infected to an extent. You've just got this kind of one big one growing down by the thing, and then you've got the Poison Ivy. Whereas this seems to be, I don't know what they were doing with them with the plants. Were they testing the G virus? Were they testing the T virus on it?
I think
they're making IVs.
Well, instead of having individual plant 43 BOWs, I think the big plant
is plant 43. Yeah,
is plant 43. Yeah, and they're just infecting these zombies, and they basically become like the plant zombies in Outbreak, don't they?
Yeah.
Yes.
Except they've got like a Venus flytrap type head
for some reason.
And yeah. Fuck that.
Very creepy.
They are creepy.
And this is where I was going with my statement before about having to replay that Birkin fight. They are a pain in the ass, those things, and the game is inconsistent in how they appear. Like, sometimes I can go through and I'll get the same pattern. I'll go into a room and it's like one's going to get up here and there's going to be one that's going to drop from the ceiling here and one drop from over here. And then the next time I'd go back and play I'd die somehow, and the next time I'd play through the same game, same difficulty, same everything, all of a sudden there was 20 of them. And they would be hiding behind things. And the problem is, it's not that I'm not prepared for them, because I can stun them and run past them, or I can, if I get grabbed and I've got, a sub-weapon that I can, set for self-defense. Problem is, you run out of sub-weapons for self-defense if you grabbed more than a couple of times. So you're only carrying like 2 or 3 sub-weapons. So eventually I would just die because one would appear out of nowhere, cheap fucking appearance, and then I would have to restart the whole, especially on the hardcore runs, start this whole thing over again. It's just like, oh my god, it's just getting so sick of it. The one-hit death in that is so cheap.
It is, and it made planning your way back to when you got towards the end of the lab section really, really annoying, because as you said, you didn't quite know how many there were going to be and where they were going to.
I think they're a nice modern spin on the IVs, though.
Yeah,
they are creepy. They are well done.
I think as a design, I think as a replacement for having more a realistic answer to having an Ivy moving around the lab, great. I think they're a really good replacement. I do agree with that too.
And one of the creepiest bits is when you first go into the greenhouse and the door can't quite open because the vines are holding it shut. It's just really icky and creepy to me.
I also liked the bit once you get past it and you go in the bowels and you've got the section with the 2 liquors.
There's a fucker of a room, that is.
That requires a lot of strategic thinking about what's the best to do, because you can kind of creep a bit of the way, and I think you can get to like the server room, although you can't get in it or something like that, and then it's like, oh, what do I do? And then that was a challenging room, because you don't want to take out the liquors if you can help it, because you want the ammo. But I think that's one of the only occasion I felt compelled to take out the liquors.
I did when I first started it. Now that I know better, the easiest thing for you to do is to, if you can, let a zombie get attention and not make noise, because the lickers don't care. Try and get as close to a doorway, one of the 2 end doorways that you can. Shoot the zombie, especially something that's going to do a headshot, especially is helpful. Then as soon as the lickers scream because they hear the noise, run straight out through the door and just wait for it all to settle back down and repeat until you get rid of all the zombies. And after that, you can just walk through without worrying about the lickers at all. So much easier.
Or just incapacitate the zombies before you even put the power on.
Oh yeah, that's a good idea. Idea. But I found that. Anyone disappointed we didn't get the evolved lickers? The mutant ones with the.
No, because realistically, I am in the sense that it's another enemy type, but realistically, the lickers in this are actually tough enough. Do you really want an even tougher, more bullet spongy licker in this?
I just think it's a shame from that we don't get to see them from a design point.
That's true. But then you could say the same thing if you really wanted to throw back to Outbreak. Why would we also not see your kind of early version of the lickers, the half transformed versions?
True.
same thing. Like,
well, that was supposed to be that I've heard that the liquor transformation scene was cut. There was apparently a scene of the liquor of a liquor.
No, I think there was a concept art. Yeah, I don't think it was ever in the game though. But concept art of someone in the mid stages between zombie and liquor.
The suspended period, ish. But yes, so it's all very generic. I remember being absolutely pissed off that we had Mr. X suddenly turn up at the end of the lab section just as you finally got your upgraded power card to get to the
again only Leon's game.
Yeah.
Oh, is it? I need to do clear it. I mean, how annoying that was! More annoying than Sin at that point because you've got to plan it through.
To be fair, he's actually really easily avoidable, and I'm not saying that just because I played it so many times. The first time I just literally ran out of the lab, and he did, and on the west side, and he disappears. That's literally it. It's pointless. It's almost pointless, really.
It is, but I just remember it being so tense because I knew that there were loads of Ivies around.
His appearance there is just to remind you he's still in the game.
I think the thing I'm more greatly disappointed about at the point of the labs is that this west section is not overly complicated. It's what it is, but then that's literally it, and then you go straight to the other side of the lab, and that's all there is to the lab section. It's fairly between the kitchen space when you first need to upgrade the thing, and then whether or not you optionally choose to go back in there to use the power thing. That's all there is to the lab. It's very short as well.
Yeah, very very short. Short of the pursuit section.
Yeah. And Leon even makes a point of it. Was that it? That was easy.
Oh, well, that's more about the fact that he just grabs the G-virus sample, but yes. Yeah, that's also funny. The thing that also makes me laugh about that is that the alarm goes off about an unauthorized G-virus sample being taken from him just literally taking it out of the tray.
Yeah.
Like, not out of the room, not out of the space in the room, but just literally the tray.
Mm-hmm.
That doesn't make any sense.
Yes, I suppose the one in Sherry's pendant that must have been authorized by.
Well, there isn't. This is the thing. There isn't one in Cherry's.
That's just used to unlock the devil vaccine.
Oh, of course. Yes,
but the alarm doesn't go off when Claire takes the devil vaccine. No one's bothered if you nick the vaccine, just the virus.
Just the virus.
So that
I thought the P4 lab was disappointing all round, to be honest.
Yeah,
I would agree. It was. It wasn't. As I said, I felt it didn't aesthetically fit 1998.
No.
The B scenario lab, you got a bit more of a cameo from the old lab, didn't you? You got the turntable tunnel, one of the downstairs control rooms from the second game. And
that appears in both scenarios.
It's not in the scenario.
Yeah, it is. Are you talking about the computer monitor wall?
Okay. Yeah, the one that.
Yeah, that's in both. It's in both.
Okay.
The monitor room is,
The monitor room is Leon walks through and then you end up having the conversation with Claire at the point at which she's just about to has just activated the lift with the train platform.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
But that's the other part because you get that subsection underneath, which is what the equivalent of, I guess, the power room and all that sort of stuff. You're kind of running through when the clock's going down. It's all very
Yeah.
So we're now at the end of the game, and we've got Birkin G3 as the final boss, as opposed to G4 in the kind of A scenario. That was an I didn't enjoy it, I don't think. I found it annoying.
It's very skill-based. It can be overall as arduous as how good your shooting is.
Yeah, mine's not very good. So
yeah, there's a distinctive pattern, and I think you guys, I sent you guys the video because I was doing the hardcore mode, and the other bit that I died heaps on was Claire's campaign was easy. I did that fight, and then I'd saved it beforehand. I did that fight, and I went through, and then I had the fight on the train platform. But playing the A scenario for Leon in hardcore, you have the Tyrant fight on the vertical platform, and that's much harder. There's easy ways to get around it, and I know this now, but at the time I didn't realise, so I played that section like 5 or 6 times. But it meant that I had to keep replaying because I'd saved before the Birkin fight. I kept replaying the Birkin fight, and that just got easier and easier. The more times I played it, I realised, there's some really obvious patterns to this, and it does become easier, and so your aiming becomes quicker, and you start to realise it's kind of like the original. Like, he only swipes from certain directions. Like, he uses his left claw dominantly, so you go to his left. Your screen left, his right, and you he hardly ever. You run straight at him, and then just at the last minute go left, and
he will. Yeah, you can miss.
You'll miss because he can't hit you. And so I was just like, okay, so once I know this, then all I need to do is just keep targeting the eyes, because that's the weak zones, obviously. And so once I started getting better at that, it became faster. So when I played through that section like 4 or 5 times, plus the other times I already played it, the first time I got like injured 4 or 5 times, you know, I was using all my health items. So, and then the next time it would be one less and one less. Eventually I got to the point where I could finish that without getting hit once. Or I'd intentionally get him to jump in the air so that he'd land on me, and then I'd use my sub-weapon as a defensive weapon, like a grenade, because then it caused extra damage to him. And I'd intentionally kind of provoke him into doing a big giant leap, because it did more damage like to him than it did to me. It did no damage to me as long as I used a sub-weapon. So, better fight than the crane one anyway, at the very least.
Well, yes, that's true, yeah. It's different. You've never seen Birkin like that. He's picking, ripping things off the wall and chucking them at you, and it's all a bit...
I guess it's equivalent to, like, in the original when he grabbed the pipe and then he used the pipe.
Yes.
He kind of ripped it off the railing, you know, like...
I was exhausted at the end, though, of that game. I was like, oh my god. And I thought that was the end. I thought I'd done it. I just had to escape. And then I did, and at this point, on the first time, I had my ammunition leading into the Tyrant fight was about 124 of the flamethrower, about 27 handgun bullets, 2 grenades, and 2 flash things, and that was probably about it. And well, it was impossible. It was impossible. But yeah, and then of course, yeah, you have the Tyrant fight, which is a bit of a homage, really, to
Operation Raccoon City.
It is. Oh, yeah, I was going to say. Yeah,
it's exactly the same fight. You fight a limit broken T-103 on the vertical lift in Operation Raccoon City.
I have to say it though, the Super Tyrant in Operation Raccoon City looks a hell of a lot better than it does in this game.
Quite right. I talked on stream, and I've talked about it on the podcast. The Tyrant 103 emerging from the lava, or the smelting pool, or whatever it is, on fire, is the very reason why I chose my username to be Tyrant. What is that at the end of the Remake 2?
It is poor. I did try to replicate it by having it on fire with the flamethrower.
It's just so uninspiring. Even the way it gets dispatched. It's hardly like falling into the what do you call it, smelting pool, is it? Or
yeah,
the way it's dispatched in the original, and you get the amazing moment when the mutated claw comes out and slams down, and you think, oh fucking hell, this ain't good. And then when it turns up at the end with that music, the music when it first arrives, it's like, oh my god, it's so underwhelming.
I can hear it right now. The music has been put underneath your the conversation you're having right now. I can see that dramatic music starting.
And the sad thing is when you put the classic soundtrack on, and I can't believe we've got this far without talking about the classic soundtrack.
No. I wanted to leave it until we'd finished.
You get a feeling. You get a feeling of that with the classic soundtrack, and even then, it's not enough to make it a great fight. It's such a disappointment. I was really, really let down by it, to be honest.
Taking away from the connection to the original is a fight in itself in the game. It's actually really lackluster. It's a very limited space that gets more limited the longer the fight goes on because of bits of ceiling for landing on the platform. Yeah. It's not very. There's not a lot of skill to it. I found even like you actually find. I went and looked up because I was struggling so much. It's like I can't figure out. There's no pattern to this. Like I'm pretty bad with patterns all the time, but I couldn't even figure a pattern out with it because I was like, okay, so maybe if I just run, he charges at me, and if I go always to one direction or I go whatever. Problem is he has like 3 attacks. One's like a vertical claw swipe. One's like a leap and slam, which is also vertical. But he also has this horizontal kind of swipe from right to left, and so there's no way to avoid that right to left one, especially is the hardest. Even people I've seen who play very well. Do you guys know what the easiest method is to actually beat him?
Isn't it taking flashbangs in?
Yeah, I see. Wait, I stopped in flashbangs.
No. Just run around in a circle. I'm not kidding. Honestly, you run around the outside of the platform. It is the easiest way to defeat him.
You say that though, but you could do that in the original. With the original Super Tyrant, you ran in a small circle around him and he would just pivot, and you just had to wait for Ada to throw the rocket launcher.
Yeah, but this time that doesn't happen if you don't. I don't think there's an inevitable clock. It comes if it does. It comes really late. You want to still damage him, but the actual easiest thing is just to run around the oblong, basically, of the outside. It's not even running in a circle specifically. It's just running around the outside of the thing. And then whenever he takes a claw strike and misses you, you turn around and like hit him with whatever weapon. Flamethrower is pretty good because you can just kind of hit him with a few bursts of flame, and the flame continues to burn him for a little bit. And you just run around until you see another opportunity. And for the most part, because you kind of keep your distance from him, he can't even hit you with the vertical slice. And when he tries to do the leap and slam, he just lands behind you because you're still moving. But it's not fun. There's no battle to the battle. It's not a fun. And it's like, by comparison, the fight with Birkin beforehand can actually be a fun battle. Like it saves you out in picking up bits of wall and tanks and throwing them and stuff. Like it's actually kind of fun. Like I actually enjoy it. I didn't actually mind replaying that. This was not fun to replay. It was just me trying to figure out a tactic. And then when I figured out that was the easiest thing to do, I was like, oh really? This isn't a fight. This is just me like running around in a circle, not really engaging in that much, and then just waiting for the rocket launcher.
Fair play to
maybe you are right. Maybe it's the original. Like
fair play to Capcom for going to the effort of hiding Ada's identity in the rocket launcher sequence.
Yeah.
For absolutely no reason whatsoever.
That feels like the antithesis, though, of what the original was, which was that when we didn't know it was Ada in 1998, like everyone just assumed it was because it was a silhouette and the voice.
And the voice.
There was. Back then, there was the pro Ada camp, and then there was the pro not Ada camp. Because everyone's like, well, yeah, of course there was, because this is the internet. And I don't know, I'm kind of split. Like, it's actually better that you don't know, but then it doesn't really make any sense. It's kind of like the whole Wesker thing. Like, she might as well be talking to Wesker, and we might as well have had references to Wesker, because at this point, it's already existing canon concept. So it wouldn't be that hard to actually just have that, and nobody would bat an eyelid at it. It's like, so you might as well blatantly just show Ada at this point throwing the rocket launcher, because we know.
No, exactly. That's true.
A key difference here, though, is Leon saw her in the original, and he heard her. So he left with a suspicion that she was still alive, which explains his lackluster response to her when he sees her in Resident Evil 4, whereas in this one, he finishes the game firmly believing that she died.
Yeah.
So that kind of finishes our little tour through the kind of A scenario, which we've kind of debriefed, I suppose, in quite a lot of detail. But we can move on to talk about kind of general feelings. And I think something we have just touched upon is the soundtrack, or should I say the lack of soundtrack. You have the choice. You don't have the choice.
Nick.
You don't have the choice. You have to pay.
You have to pay.
Guys, you've neglected Claire's final boss.
Is that
it's the A scenario? Yeah, it's the same in both. So it's Birkin. This is what I was trying to establish, because we were talking about this. I was trying to work out whether or not this is a new form that we hadn't untoward seen, or if it's such a massive revamp of a form. And everyone's telling me that on the screen it says when you die that it's
G4.
G4.
It is. I think it's meant to be, yeah.
And the more I look at it, it's like the dog beast, but it's a reformed dog beast because it has arms and can climb up a wall now. And
that's literally from Dark Side.
And it doesn't have as many teeth. It just has more eyes than it has teeth in the middle now, which is also weird. So I'm like, is this another form between the forms? But obviously not. That fight is
horrible,
disappointing in the sense that it's
just a bullet sponge fight. It's everything you feared, Nick.
No, this is what you do in the B scenario as well. Then in Claire B, is that?
Yes.
No, it's in Claire A as well. That is Claire's
fine,
final boss. That is Claire's replacement for the Tyrant. So Claire will never fight the Tyrant on the lift.
I see. I need to do that.
And this again, which is why the A and B scenarios, or first and second, depending on what you're reading, like aren't really that different. You play Claire's A game is the same as Claire's second game, puzzle answers aside.
Yes. Yeah, I didn't like the G4 fight much, because you think you're going to go all powerful with a Gatling gun, and it doesn't really do that.
Well, it does. It's just a giant bullet sponge. This is the problem. And then when it comes down to finishing the boss, it's literally enough until you've shot the eyes out enough that it then crawls towards you. And whether or not you continue to shoot at it, I guess depends on whether or not you've got how much time you've got left on the countdown as well. If you don't shoot it and you just keep moving away from it, it eventually just gurgles and dies anyway. The eyes will start popping and it dies. So it's just.
I think a lot of people have had issues with that fight, though. I think I've read online.
It is rubbish. It's a rubbish fight.
But it's that you can't avoid some particular attacks, I think.
Oh no, you can't. You can avoid all attacks, but they're not very. It's not very obvious. Like the one where he charges at you, he can follow you for ages, and that can differ depending on where you're placed. It's not consistent. You basically just have to get an angle away from him so that he runs into a flat surface. But sometimes it depends on where he starts. That if you're on one side of the train platform and say you're at one end of the train and he's at the other, and he does that charge at you, you can run around the corner and he doesn't hit the corner as a corner and stop himself, like stun himself. He actually does follow the corner and runs around and will knock into you. And then especially in some of depending on your health, he takes quite a lot of health doing that. Even and obviously in hardcore it takes you straight to danger, but even on standard I think it's like half your health easily, or maybe more. And that's inconsistent because the next time he might do that and then bump into the wall and he stuns himself. It's very weird. Something's not right with the way it reacts, and that's probably why people are complaining. That seems inconsistent, unfair, which it probably is really. When I think about it.
All right, well we'll come back to a bit more about that on B anyway. But so in terms of the music, as I was saying, if we talk firstly about the vanilla soundtrack, I thought was easily the most disappointing element of the game. The lack of soundtrack was terrible. I know what they're trying to do, because I think Resident Evil 7 pulled it off quite successfully. But there's minimal, which is Resident Evil 7 soundtrack, and then there's non-existent, which was the Remake 2 soundtrack.
It's the most disappointing soundtrack of the entire series, and in that I include Operation Raccoon City.
Wow. I barely reckon... The only time I think I ever even... my ears pricked up was the save room, but that's quiet.
And it only happens once.
Yeah. It happens, and then, I think Birkin G3.
Yeah, G3's got a song that
operatic
doesn't equate to operatic thing. It doesn't equate to the same as the original soundtrack, but it's the closest approximation it's got. The only other bits in the entire soundtrack that I remember paying attention to is literally the opening sequence when you run towards the door with whatever character you're playing as, and the other characters on the side of the door. You get the same dramatic build-up noise, and them leaving in the police car has the same little bit of a beat behind it from the original cutscene. And the only other thing that most people remember is the new version of the Mr. X theme. That's literally it. Which, depending on your personal preference, is actually really good, or sounds like he's going to be in a strip club and about to start taking that hat off for an entirely different reason.
Well, that's just ruined it. No, I thought this Mr. X theme tune was actually quite good, but I said most of the game, you barely notice if there's anything going on. Don't get me, the sound effects are really good, and we talk about the gore and the actual. And I think some concerns about the sound of the gun from the demo were alleviated. I think the gun sounded okay in the end. But the soundtrack was woeful. And you guys keep telling me to buy the original soundtrack, and everyone says,
let me sell it for the audience. I will never ever turn off the classic soundtrack, because just the simple fact of fighting the Birkin boss battles with the classic themes is good enough, right? But walking around the sewer with a marshalling yard theme is everything.
Yeah.
Going around the STARS office with that piece of music playing, I'm never going to go back. Not ever.
It's the same. I played the Fourth Survivor and had the original.
Yeah.
Dun, dun, dun,
It's ace. It's quality. But Nick,
I'm like, yes, awesome.
The biggest thing I can sell you it with the classic soundtrack on. The next time you play the game, the next time it loads up, plays the original
a track screen
music, and it fucking says Resident Evil 2 when you press the start button. Come on,
as it should. No, I'm not gonna fall for Capcom silly games. I'm not paying £2.50.
You pay more for a pint, and you'll have more enjoyment out of this than a pint can give you.
let's draw a line in the sand. It's criminal that this wasn't just an unlock that you actually
Agreed.
have to pay for it as
Completely
DLC.
agree.
Let's not be pretentious about it. This should have been something that just was an unlockable regardless, because I think the soundtrack download as a key is like 80 megabytes. It's 80 megabytes that could have been on that disc. It's not much at all.
Yeah.
It's not much at all, but oh my god, it improves the game.
You will never. I swear to you, you will never turn it off.
Yeah, I say this. I played through the game. Played through the game, all 4 scenarios, and my 2 hardcore runs that I did for S Plus mode with the actual soundtrack, and then I played all my other runs that I've done ever since with the unlockable weapons with that original soundtrack. And I'm like, why did I not put the original soundtrack on earlier? Honestly, I wish I'd done it. I wish I'd done it after my first run.
Come on, Nick, do it.
I won't. I'm going to get it on the Game of the Year edition.
Oh,
Nick. It'll be on that.
By then we'll be playing Resident Evil 8 or bloody whatever.
Remake 3.
Remake 3. Come on. It's £2.50.
Doing a disservice. If you're going to replay it now, just do it.
Yeah.
Stop. Darn. Honestly,
The marshalling yard theme. Come on.
We're not underselling it. Just spend the money.
Do you know actually one of my favourite bits?
Honestly, no, I will pay for it.
One of my favourite bits. And I say this it was one of my least favourite sections of the game is the lab. There is an amazing moment where the music kicks in when you go down the dark corridor toward the kitchens, and the classic lab theme kicks in, and it's like, oh wow, this is incredible.
It's a damning indictment of the vanilla one, though, isn't it?
The vanilla soundtrack to the game is the worst in the series because it's so uninspiring and woeful in its interpretation.
If anything we've said about the entire game is that they've they've changed things and remixed things and redone things with intent, and you see that I think this is the one thing we probably all agree is that regardless of what we think about connections to lore or anything later on, there's a certain level of care and craft that has definitely gone to all the elements. So they've paid attention to what was in the original, but the music is the one area where that does not apply. It feels like they've realised this, and this is the reason why this DLC actually exists. Is that they realised that the soundtrack was so what it was, they could never even come close.
This is a series, even in its worst entries, this is a series that is celebrated for its soundtrack. That there are orchestral performances you can attend in Japan of this soundtrack, for these games. They are the soundtracks to this series is beloved, and I only need to talk about things like Resident Evil 5 with Winds of Madness, even Resident Evil 6 has a great soundtrack for all of its faults that game has. Even, and like I say, Operation Raccoon City, I defy anyone to say the Nemesis remix in that game is not good. It's a really well composed piece of music. So the fact that they just had such a lackluster approach to what is generally regarded as the best soundtrack in the series is a little bit unforgiving, made right by the DLC.
And that's DLC, which again, it's a crime that it's a DLC, but honestly, I would put it up there as one of the best pieces of DLC just for the fact of what it does.
Sure.
Mike.
Well, let's keep in our negativity pit.
Let's go.
And we can dwell on the crushing disappointment of the B scenario or second run, as they say. Whatever.
Can I? Well, sorry, I'll let you go. I was going to say, I'm going to preface this by saying, why even bother? Let's be honest. Let's go back and look at this from an entire basis. Whatever the second run is, it would have been so much better just to have 2 scenarios that were so much more tightly scripted.
Yeah,
than
agreed.
4 lackluster attempts at
Completely
stuff that
agreed.
just doesn't connect.
All they had to do was follow the template of Claire A. Leon B, because that's the canon one. As much as I prefer it the other way around, I know Claire A. Leon B is the canon one because of the Sherry infection storyline. There is your script. There is your roadmap. Just make that.
It doesn't even have to be that. The thing is, as well, when you've got this ability to remake it, you can use that as your baseline and have like 80% of it. But there's bits from the other scenario you can bring them across. There was nothing stopping them from doing that either, because there's bits that you could still make line up from the other way round with those character beats that would still work with having the mass majority being Claire A, Leon B.
Guys,
that's simple truth.
I'm going to annoy a few people here who are listening right now, and for you guys, I want you to listen really, really carefully. Okay, there is only one Mr. X in this game, right? There is only one.
You can glitch it for a second one.
I don't care. Yeah, you can. I've seen that video. It's good. I don't care what what theories you've got, there is only one Mr. X in this game. The other 5 are at the Dead Factory, I'm afraid. Come on, no,
until Remake 3 comes out, and then there's only 3 of them.
Yeah, but they've taken the approach of the original Resident Evil in that you've got the Chris and Jill storyline, and they don't really intersect, but yet they both exist. This is the same in this. Okay,
I think
it doesn't matter if Mr. X dies in Claire's campaign because it's a different Mr. X to the one that's in Leon's campaign because they're different because they're not really that connected.
Yeah, because the puzzles are all the same and the pathways are all the same regardless.
I've seen people go to
consistency.
I've seen people go to these great lengths to explain about how the fact that there's 3 Mr. X's in the game and this is when this one appears and this is when this one appears. Okay, you want to go to that level to explain how the Tyrant can heal itself after Birkin's massive wound. You explain to me how Birkin can fall off a gantry, come back up the gantry, repair the floor so he can have the same fight again. You can't apply that logic to Mr. X and then just ignore it for the Birkin battles. The scenarios that are just not meant to intersect, and that is the unfortunate truth of the remake. And hey guys, I don't like it either. I'm sorry.
The A scenario is the canon, and that's the canon for one character. It doesn't matter which character you pick, that is the canon scenario, and the other one, it's like the original game, isn't it? The B scenario, I see it as essentially like the randomizer feature for the N64 version. It's just a different way to experience the same game with different enemy placement, different item placement. Some of the item boxes are switched around, I think. But
the only difference is obviously the character path is specific to the character. So if it's clear, it's through the chief's office and the orphanage, and it's Leon. It's the east wing, and the sewer entrance is different.
And you've just got that added incentive of an alternate opening and an extended ending. That's all it is. I can see why Capcom kept quiet about it, really, because I think they knew if they'd mentioned that there is 4 scenarios, people were just going to automatically assume it's a repeat of the zapping system, which it obviously isn't.
And it's massively disappointing it's not there. We're not gonna beat around the bush. That mechanic in 1998 was legendary.
I was saving ammo. I was leaving hip packs, or trying to, and I'll save the stuff in the armory for Claire.
But to see it, and that's one of the greatest tragedies for me, is Leon and Claire's relationship is harmed as a result of it. In no matter which version of the game you played, in the original, you got the feeling that these 2 characters were working through the story together, because there would be key moments.
They had their own paths,
There'd be key moments where they'd get on the radio. When you moved out the RPG, they'd get on the radio and they would be working through the story together. They'd even have a meeting in the sewer. Leon and Claire, outside of their little meeting at the gate, do not speak to each other until the end of the game, bar one little file you can pick up in the Star's office. That's it.
Oh no, there's more.
There's one more. There's one more.
There's 2. There's one at the cable car.
The cable car. Sorry, yeah. So it's files, but it's not actual interactions or speaking over a radio. And
also, can I also are strongly disappointed at the beginning, because obviously the very beginning of the B scenario pretty much takes place at the gate sequence. With the gate scene, doesn't it? And it's like, I just hated the fact that it goes, I sense Leon's been here a long time. And it's like, yeah, he bloody well has. And the timing is off right from the beginning. There's a whole section in the streets, perhaps it's DLC coming, at the beginning of the B scenario. The
timing doesn't work at all, because by the time you're in the A scenario, so put it in perspective of whatever the characters of the A scenario, so they managed to go through the streets, go through the east offices, talk to Marvin, go through, get the west, go into the west wing, go up the stairs to the library, come back to Marvin, and then by then that's when the characters appeared outside the gate, and then they mysteriously are standing there before the helicopter has crashed, even though, because that doesn't match up either.
And in Leon's case, he's got to get changed and get all his gear on.
Yes, I think at some point they thought about doing it, which is what the scene is with at the gate, and then I think they realised they're not going to be able to do it in time, or they just didn't really do it. It's never. So they thought they'll sod it. We'll just have they planned out part A, and that's how it was. And they're going to have maybe some meeting points and whatnot, but they just thought, sod it, we'll just do the same game. They couldn't be bothered. I don't say bothered in necessarily a negative way. I just didn't think they could be bothered to try and make it work. So he just thought we'll just cobble it together and, people can have some fun, which is fine. But I think I would have possibly preferred a lengthier Part A than the first run.
You just think about some of my favourite moments in the original are the interactions between Leon and Claire. I've talked waxed lyrical about their moment in the STARS office together, and you get nothing. You don't even get the conversations over the radio. We now have access to the back of the precinct. There's just nothing. They have no interaction. Leon and Claire, they essentially do not care about how the other person is doing, whereas you always felt tethered to them in the original, which made it all the more rewarding at the end when they actually do reunite on the train, because it feels like it's a journey that they've both been through. Their moment on the monitor at the end of the remake is pure happenstance. They just happen to be in that place at the right time. That's it.
Yeah.
And by what you see in the B scenario, the other character has just been leaving notes, which obviously you never see them do anyway, which doesn't make any sense. But they're just on the hope that maybe you're going to come across this note and these random items I may have left you.
All I needed to do was do 2 scenarios that linked up a lot better, and just have like a Resident Evil 3 choice thing at the start, which determined which character started at the front of the police station and which character started at the back. Yep, that's all I needed to do to experience the full game.
I completely agree, and I think you said it as well before, John. I would have sooner had one clear narrative for Leona and Claire than 4 sort of half-assed same scenarios.
Yeah, because out of the 4 scenarios, only one of them really matters.
Yeah, the others are just essentially cosmetic differences, really, aren't they?
Well, let's climb out of the pit, because we, for all these negativities, I think they're quite obvious negative points, but overall, I think we are quite positive towards this game. I think it's been a revelation in terms of its survival horrorness. So, I think we should go on.
I was just going to say, shall I put it out there? Is it the best over-the-shoulder Resident Evil game?
By a country mile.
Yeah, I would say
yes.
so easily. Yeah, it's the one that truly feels like it's the game they've been working to get to for 14 years.
Yep.
For the care and quality they've put into this game, just play this game for 10 minutes and then spend 10 minutes with Resident Evil 6. The difference is phenomenal.
And that's even Leon's section, which is the survival horror bit.
I think this comes down to just the fact that they thought really clear and hard about the sort of gameplay style and campaign they wanted as far as that part goes. And I think that's the bit that shines through the most, is that the gameplay and the way that those things play out, like how Mr. X works, how the enemy damage placement, how to transverse this and how to make that balance between actually trying to keep the survival part of the survival horror aspects going is the key, and I think that bit is the bit they've succeeded with the most. I was going to say we've got one last thing in the B scenario, which obviously is the last boss fight, which is the only difference.
Oh, what, the G5?
Yes.
Did anyone? I got killed on that, and I was ingested by the toothy vagina.
I say visually, it's incredible how it starts breaking the train up.
Yeah,
it's really astonishing visually.
Yeah, that's what I wanted to talk about. It is visually, if what we originally saw was a cutscene with a weird polygon monster that tries to like pull itself inside the train and then goes back into a CG cutscene, what they've done to replace that, and the visuals in this game are amazing too.
Yes,
it's truly grotesque, isn't it?
Yeah, it's really, yeah. It's actually really horrific, and I think it really keys. I think the one thing that's worked about Birkin right from the get-go, and why I wanted to bring this up, is the whole body horror aspect of it has always been a really good idea, and the way that it is showcased in this game throughout is actually really impressive. His transformations get weirder and creepier and grosser.
Yes, he's not a difficult boss, but you just got to keep pounding him sufficiently so he doesn't get too close, otherwise because you can't get back through the door.
It doesn't even say how much damage. I killed him with a spark shot.
Oh, did you? Okay.
Yeah, I just started to give it a go, and I think it only took 3 charges, and that was it. And if you're playing as Leon, you've got the rocket launcher.
Oh, of course, yes. Yeah. Oh, that didn't last long. Oh, right. Well, as we could quickly talk about the 4th survivor as well. That leads nicely into Birkin as well. I don't think they even tried. I think they've realised that the majesty of perhaps the RE2, the original FMV of Birkin's or Hunk's attack, plus the quality of the Outbreak video. I don't think they even tried.
Oh God, yeah, Nick, how can I not get onto that?
I know. They just thought of the videotapes, just show little bits, which I actually think I think it's probably sensible that they didn't try to replicate it because they wouldn't have come close.
And this is something we'll get onto in the Canon podcast, I think. It's the fact they don't even try to replicate these big moments of the Canon, do they? They leave it well alone, and what they replace it with, though, I will say, is not great. I don't think you get any aspect of the desperation of Birkin or Annette or anything. It's really disappointing.
It serves its purpose. I'm kind of in the mid-ground, and it's like I understand that it serves its purpose. I think the one with, I think the best part of them comes from the last videotape one, which is that the guy who shoots Birkin gets told off because they weren't supposed to shoot him. They were supposed to take him in, and that bit was never made very clear in the original. I think that's the only bit about it that it does better. They were supposed to bring him in with the research.
That sequence is so iconic in the original, though, and
it is.
And the Outbreak retelling done from the rat perspective.
Bloody hell, fourth Survivor's hard as well, though, isn't it?
I'm pleased they kept it as a mini game and didn't try to canonise it, though. So, Umbrella Chronicles, you're still relevant. Well done.
Well, it's not much different, is it?
Well, Umbrella Chronicles actually has a storyline that you work through, and I thought they were going to, because it's narrated and he has radio chatter and stuff playing through it.
There's a little bit of that, but it's mostly. Hands up, who's actually finished for Survivor?
I can't. I got to the Ivy Corridor and fucking died.
I got to the courtyard, and then I needed to turn it off before I destroyed my console.
Okay, so I'm the only one here who's actually finished it.
Yeah.
Okay. Cool. All right.
But I've seen the ending, and there's nothing.
Yeah, there's not much. It's literally just the only difference is the pilot wanted to meet Hunk because he knows he's nicknamed the Grim Reaper, and that's literally the only difference, and that's still well within its reach of.
There is a really nice throwback to Umbrella Chronicles, though, because he actually repeats a line. He actually he gets to say, "Death is your responsibility. This is war. Death is your responsibility," which he said in Umbrella Chronicles. Which is just although he says it to Goblin 6 in Umbrella Chronicles.
Does he even actually reference him having a sample of the G virus in this?
I don't think so.
It doesn't. It just talks about him being a survivor.
So he's just escaping. So anyone who hasn't played the original doesn't know, right? Okay.
They just assume he's one of the only survivor of the team.
Yep.
And unexplained.
Dead aim, not canon, no.
So you guys are really struggling with it, obviously, though. So to me, it plays exactly like the original. I know just without the timer on the screen, obviously. But most rooms are just literally they're mini puzzles. They're actually, people always think it's about the combat, but it's not. There's a direct line through most rooms that's like which enemies you need to avoid, which ones you need to take out. Every room is a puzzle. It's literally all it is. It's not, once you work out what those puzzles are, it's not hard. Okay. Like there are rooms where you can, as long as you know which path in between which zombies, they can't grab you. If you know which enemies you need to take out and which ones you can avoid, those are the ones to attack. It's all a shape and a pattern. Like even rooms where there's the room when you come out of the sewers underneath the RPD, and it's like a dark room and there's zombies everywhere. Honestly, you very much just run straight ahead. I know it sounds ridiculous. It doesn't seem to make sense, but you literally just run pretty much straight at the first zombie that you see, and they don't have a chance to even grab you before they get off the ground. Same with the parking lot. You pretty much run a zigzag pattern right towards the gate from the sewer section from where you come out. Yep. And then you go right, and you have to shoot like one zombie. That's it. It's ridiculous. And then obviously any rooms with the liquors you can walk through. And if there's something else and the liquor, you just avoid the other thing and then walk. The ivies are the worst part in that entire thing, so I'm not surprised you guys are having trouble with the ivies.
It was just me.
And
I didn't have any self-defense items.
And the other part of it is that outside bit, there's like 4 enemy types. I think there's like the big G mutation, there's an IV or 2 IVs and like zombies and maybe a dog. It's pretty, that last section out in the courtyard is pretty fucking killer, to be quite honest. That's the most.
Is that how far you got then, John?
The courtyard right at the end, yeah.
Oh,
so I ran outside thinking, oh yeah, this is ace, and then there's a fucking G creature there, and
an ivy.
zombies and an ivy, and I was like, yeah, right, you've got me. I'll give up. I'll shoot myself in the head.
You definitely need at least one defensive sub weapon for that area. Flash grenade or a grenade.
Yeah, I think I was out of everything by the time I got to that bit.
I think it's a shame as well you don't get the when you finish Fourth Survivor in this, you don't get the little splash screen which tells you he escaped with the G virus.
No, you
don't actually get that little bit of canon. I'm sure. Is there not something that confirms you got the G virus in the original Fourth Survivor ending?
Yeah, it's just at the beginning. I've got the sample.
Yeah, the ending just shows him flying away in the helicopter, doesn't it?
Yeah.
In the helicopter, and then there's the alternate version for the tofu one where it's Hunk flying away cooking tofu.
Yeah.
Right. Well, we've had quite a lot of call-ins, and what we're going to do, we're going to play a couple now, and we'll comment on them, and then the rest we'll have for episode 51. Apologies if you have sent in a note. We've had some that have been sent in, but we are conscious of trying to keep everyone awake, and we've been recording. This is going to be quite a long podcast. You're probably quite towards the end now, so so we want to give as much time and effort on everyone's call-in, so we can. I think we'll have probably more time to do it the next one. So the first one is from Lou.
Hey guys, it's Lou here, and we made it. The RE2 remake's here, and in my opinion, it's pretty damn great. Has some issues, but I want to get into the positives first. First off, I think that this is really not just a love letter to the original RE2, but to the whole series in general. This is like a greatest hits game in my opinion. You've got all these different gameplay elements, like the ammo mixing from 3, the multiple stories from 1 and 2, even if it's kind of leaning a little more towards 1 in its execution here. You've got the over-the-shoulder camera from 4, even the best parts of the item searching and mapping from 0. It's all here. The defensive mechanisms and weapons from Remake, too. It's all just really blended well, and it feels frightening, too. I love the new RPD. It's got such a great mood, environment, and the fact that there's no loading, and you can just wander around, and that you're always on the move while getting those real few moments to really savor things are great. Because it's not that I'm just wandering around with nothing to do, it's that I'm getting lost. But when I'm getting lost, I'm actually also being terrified of knowing what enemies to take out, what zombies to dodge, where the tyrant's going to show up. It keeps me on the edge of my feet while also giving me plenty of time to explore. There are great puzzles in this, and these are the first puzzles in a while that I've actually kind of had to rack my brain and admittedly look up guides. It's phenomenal. The writing is also terrific. I really love how they updated things. Seeing characters like Marvin and Kendo get not only updated personalities and expanded personalities, but some of the most genuinely moving series moments, they did good there. Likewise, I'd also say that Leon and Ada's interactions were terrific, and that Claire and Sherry, they updated those stories so well, in my opinion. There's some flaws there, and there's some characters that I have an issue with. Namely, I think that Irons was handled better in the original, where rather than making him proactive as they did in this, which would have been fine, I would have rather they had at least built him up, and not just kind of run in with him being a psychopathic abuser. That being said, though, on that topic, Claire and Sherry are wonderful. I'd say, even more so than Leon and Ada, I just really had a soft spot for Claire and Sherry's plot. The Lucky Jacket scene on the tram, that may be one of my favorite takes on their interactions ever. And I would actually say that moments like that and Leon and Ada's confrontation within the labs, that I'll say it. I think I prefer those to the original version of the game. On the other hand, though, you have Annette, and I still don't think anybody in 20 years has ever figured out what to do with her character, and I don't know what they were trying to do here, but at least I felt like they were somewhat along the lines of finally having a solid, definitive portrayal of her that kind of meshed with the original game. But she's such a weird character, I don't know if anybody knows what to do with her at all. Oh, and yeah, Ben was there, I guess. That was kind of a letdown too. But anyways, other things that I really liked were just the way that the puzzles, I think I already said that the puzzles are a challenge, but They are. This game is a challenge. I had to strategize and move about and think of everything, and that's the first time in a while, even with 7, which was a challenging game for me. This is the first time that I've had the chance to really feel like I was exploring all the way through, even to the end game, and that means a lot. It took me back to the classic feeling of 2 and relearning everything, because much like the remake of RE1 throughout most of the mansion for that, this made me go, wait, I don't know this game. I thought I knew this game. I know bits of it, but not all of it. And on the other hand, though, there's the things that I wish could have been done better. The biggest issue for me is the loss of the real divided scenarios. And what I mean by that is, each individual campaign is fine, and streamlining your story is fine, but the problem is that in doing that, the second run mode felt pretty weak. I was okay with it the first time I did it, because when I did my first run, I thought, okay, this is giving me the other side of the story. Maybe things are a little different now. And you did have to redo a lot of puzzles in the first RE2. Thing is, where it falls apart for me is that it's so similar to the first run of the game that you do, and that the bosses are often shared. I took a big issue with the fact that all the Birkin fights are in both campaigns, and that just left a sour note in my mouth of thinking that they could have done something else. They could have split things up and maybe diversified things a little bit more, and it just made me let down. It doesn't spoil the whole game for me, mind you. It's just, it could have been better. We could have had something different, and I wish they had executed that a bit differently. Likewise, I also do think that certain elements of the game, namely the Gator and Sherry sections, they could have used some work. The irony is, in this case, that I think that the Sherry section is better in this than in the original RE2, whereas the Ada sections in this are worse than the original RE2. And I didn't like the scanning, but I thought the tense hide and seek in the orphanage was actually pretty damn good. And the other area that didn't really work for me, I would have to say, is the sewer, because that's where I feel like the game does get into a bit of a slog. You do kind of just march around, and while I do like the idea of expanding on the G creatures, and there's some really creepy stuff in there, the game slows to a bit of a crawl there, and hunting for all the pieces, I think that could have been done better. The only other thing in terms of gameplay design that bothered me were, ironically, both of the final bosses. I do not like the new Super Tyrants look. Not just because of nostalgia, no, because I will admit, and Sean will probably hate me for this, I like the head on the Tyrant. I like the Undertaker kind of vibe that I get from it. It's fine. I like it. It looks creepy. He still looks creepy. It's just that you've sacrificed a iconic and actually really intimidating design for something that looks more quote-unquote realistic, but doesn't feel anywhere near as memorable. And likewise with G4 Birkin, you've thrown out a boss fight that, while annoying, was really well designed with something that just looks like a doofy rubber suit, and isn't very fun to play either. On my Claire second run, as of this recording I'm doing my Leon second run, it just wasn't that fun. And yet everything else really clicked gameplay-wise, except for one other thing, and it's a very glaring thing for me, and I know other people have brought it up, and that's the music. RE2's got one of the best soundtracks in the series, and for me, a big part of Resident Evil has always been the music. 2 is one of those games where people know those songs. They know the RPD's main hall song. And yet this game, while trying to have that ambience to it, loses the music. And I feel like you lose a chunk of the soul of the original by underplaying it. The classic DLC for the sounds is a really nice touch, but that's paid DLC. I just wish that more of the remixes and more of those iconic things had been in there. But as it stands, the game is a lot of fun. Would I say that it replaces the original? No, not really. I would say that it really kind of sits alongside it. This is a kind of a weird case for me, because I love RE2 to death, the original RE2. I will always love the original RE2 to death, but I really love this as well. And I think that in the future, I'm going to be able to look at both games and enjoy them from their own perspectives. What Capcom does with the canon and the lore, I don't know. This obviously is a much darker take. I liked the darker elements, I liked the more human and sinister elements, and I liked the new bits of lore. And that they kept it self-contained. They didn't do a lot of naming and call-outs to other games, which I was worried about, but I'm happy that this is a self-contained title. I'm happy that this isn't trying to tease a 3, or trying to, link up to God knows how many obscure sources. I'm actually okay with that, because it keeps it as simple as the original game was. That being said, if they do choose to adapt elements of this, or we end up with more of a headache with the continuity, so be it. We'll sort it out. That's what this fandom does. That's what we've done in the past. We oftentimes have to take things with a grain of salt, and I think we will. well. But in the end, RE2 Remake, one of the best games so far this year. It was everything that I hoped for the most part. I did forget to mention, Fourth Survivor's really good. It's too hard at the moment for me, but I'll get there. And Tofu Survivor is even more amazing and honest-to-God hilarious than ever. Tofu Sentai for life. It's great to see so much love and care put into a game and put into a remake by a team that you can tell really did love the material. And so I've got to say, like Capcom said, we do it, and they did it. So bravo, thank you Capcom for this wonderful remake, and whatever you've got stored for the future, I look forward to it. I'm sold, peace out, hope you guys enjoyed the game as much as I did, can't wait to hear that canon bloodbath. Love y'all.
Yeah, I'd pretty much echo everything he said.
He disagreed with you over, sort of
The Tyrant with the Hat, but it's fine.
Tyrant with the Hat, but also he like Lou mentioned, he enjoyed the interactions with Claire and Ada. I think something we haven't talked upon is Leon and Ada is the Claire scenarios in terms of her voice. As you said at the beginning, she was difficult to get work with, but he's right. The kind of like Lucky Jacket bit was the first point in Claire's scenario where I started to warm to Claire. Yeah, and I started to get it right.
When she talks about her parents being dead as well, is it?
Yeah, I was going to say, I think this is the difference between when the original game, where it kind of feels like that connection already happens pretty early on, because obviously Sherry runs away from Claire a couple of times, and then she meets her in the chief's the art area behind the chief's office, and that kind of didn't really happen. There's none of that build up. So when the one happens in the cable car, it's good to see it eventually, but it's taken such a long time to get there. It doesn't feel. I think the other thing that we haven't really talked about, and it's probably something we should have covered, was Annette and the inconsistency in her character. In some ways, I like the things that they've done with her character in this version compared to the original, because, as you said, there's some truth about they never quite were able to work out the character, and we kind of touched on a little bit before with Ada, how she keeps blaming Annette. I mean, obviously Annette is not, but the problem is that the game, it doesn't know which way to play Annette either. It's like either she's trying to stop William, and it seems like a noble reason because she knows how much of a serious issue this is, but she puts that over Sherry's well-being. And yeah, in the original, she still cared a lot for Sherry. There was obviously a lot of that there, and it kind of was against her love for William as well, even though he'd turned into a monster. And they still haven't even worked out in this remake which way they want to play that. So she's very inconsistent. So I definitely agree with that as well.
I think that's an excellent point. Well, thank you, Lou, for that call. I think that was a really, really informative and reasoned discussion. I share a lot. I think it was a superb game. Now, the next call in is from Mike Allison. Wesker's Report.
This is Wesker's Report, Mike Allison, and I'm giving my take on Resident Evil 2 Remake. I'll break it down by category, and I'll start with the story. The story is shit, but I know you guys will be covering this on the next show, so I'll just move along to the graphics. The game looks gorgeous, stunning in places even. Some things I'm not happy with, though, is that there's no reflection in the puddles of water on the ground, nothing in the mirrors. It's not like in Remake where you could see yourself beautifully reflected everywhere. Here it's just very monotone in that sense, and the mirrors have just been blotted out, blacked out. There's the interrogation room, but that's it. Just seems kind of lazy on Capcom's behalf. Everything else looks so stellar. Claire's face in some story selections, in particular at the ending when she sees Leon on the train, just really bizarre. She just has this unnatural, weird alien expression on her face. It only happens for a second, but it reminded me of Mia's neck in RE7's intro. Her mouth too. I mean, in game she's fine. The gameplay sections, there's nothing wrong. It's just there's still something with this photo technology that Capcom's using, photorealistic, that it's just off when you see the characters' faces up real close. Something with the proportions is just, it's not right. The zombies, there was some clipping issues, like their hands would come through the boarded windows. If you go up real close, you could see, even when you boarded up the windows. I wanted some lightning with my rain. In Remake, it was just so awesome how you could hear the weather outside, the rain pattering against the windows and the walls, and then lightning would come through in the hallway. It would have been really awesome if they had done that, especially with these light effects here. But overall, everything was gorgeous. Looked great. No complaints there. Let's see, moving on to gameplay. Very smooth, very polished. I was very pleased with the overall gameplay. The game wasn't difficult. I mean, this is Capcom. It's not FromSoft. What do you expect? But I did die a few times. I played it on standard, so not much else to say about the difficulty level. I liked how you had to stand still for your reticle to become more precise. It definitely made me more cautious than I normally would be in over-the-shoulder type environment. That was good. The knife mechanic was cool. I liked how you could recover it after the kill. There was a few occasions in the game where I even got stuck, which is really cool. That hasn't happened in forever. I didn't know what to do next. Even with the on-screen map, even with all that hand-holding, I still it led to some exploration. It's good stuff there. Let's see. Trying to think here. I did Leon A and Claire B. The parking garage with Claire, which was full of liquors. That was great. I was trying to conserve ammo and said, fuck it, let me just try walking past them. The files always say that. They say, walk quietly past the liquors. Walk quietly, don't let them hear you. And sure enough, it worked. It was great. It was really great to walk quietly past the liquors. And lo and behold, they didn't attack me. It was quite chilling, just slow stepping right next to them, right past into the next area. It was really cool. I was pleased. In the original, can't believe how many times I've gone through the original. And can you do that? I would always attack them anyway. I know it said it in the in-game files then too, but anyway, here they really implemented it. Is awesome. I love doing that, and it lived up to the notes in the files. Sure enough, you could walk right past them. It was really, really good. I was very pleased with that section. The boss fights G4 and G5 were outstanding. Epic, great, looked great, felt great. G models all had a great aesthetic to them, great design. In contrast, though, with Leon A, I didn't like the Super Tyrant, Mr. X's Super Tyrant boss fight or transformation. It was a bit underwhelming. I know they're going with this more realistic look, but to be honest, it was just, they should have done a little more there. His chase scenes throughout the RPT were good, though. When he was chasing around the RPD. G3 was good. Let's see what else. I love the Gator section. I think they did justice to it. Sherry and Ada sections felt tacked on. The extras, I haven't even gone into Hunk Survivor mode yet. I know once you do that, you get tofu. Oh, the concept art. There's a great unused concept art in there that shows like a sky tram. I don't know if you guys seen it, but it takes you through the raccoon forest and to the Umbrella Lab. It's the only way you can get there because everything else is blocked off, walled off with wreckage. It's really cool. That concept shot would have been a nice addition, a nice way to get to the labs. It was. I really like that concept. All the concept arts were very well done. Let's see what else. I'm really surprised at how short the actual game is. I mean, you can just breeze through it. It's shocking. I mean, after the RPD, the sewer area really is broken down into two parts. The lab is just a quick mix of matching fluid level on an automated machine system. Nothing compared to VJOL. It's a joke. You're just like messing around with water levels. A bit more enemy variety would have been welcome. Can't think of much else gameplay-wise. So moving on to music, from what I could hear, it sounded good. But other than the final third of the game, it's pretty much absent. You have to really strain your ears. It's weird. Sometimes I could hear the same room music, and sometimes I couldn't hear it. And I'm still in the save room. Like, it sounded like when I went in, you could hear it, and then it tuned out, which is really odd. I mean, I guess, I don't know how it's broken down, when the cues, but it's very much in the background, very much. And I don't know if this is a new phase now with Capcom where the sound effects are front and center, the music's in the background, less enemy variety. I mean, this is a pattern I'm seeing. It kind of feels like a successor to 7, this game does, more than to the original game. But anyway, I don't want to rant on that, but the sound effects were really good. Speaking of which, I have a 7.1 headphones that I put on, so that binaural sound or whatever was pretty cool. Aside from the gunshots, those kind of felt weak. There was no gusto to them. They were pretty weak. Well, that's it, fellas. I can't really think of anything else, but keep up the great work, and I hope you enjoyed my review. Wesker out.
I mean, he doesn't obviously go into the canon, and that's going to be the biggie.
I fear we would, yeah. But I'm glad someone else pointed out the fact that the photorealistic stuff has issues with the...
Yeah. I'm almost wondering whether you two actually had some sort of collaboration before you came on the podcast, Nick, because that was nearly word for word what you said earlier on.
It was genuinely, well, great minds think alike, I say, but it was. I've always said it, that there's something slightly odd about the facial animations with this photo thing. It happened in 7. Just watch the opening clip of 7 where Mia goes, hello, to the camera.
How does she go, Nick?
Sorry. It just feels, it gives you the creeps. It's like, it's not quite right. Anyway, but
that uncanny valley concept, that's what you're talking about, which is
that
it looks human enough. Yeah, looks human enough, but something's not quite right, so it makes you feel unsettled. It's the same. You've seen the Polar Express or any of those Robert Zemeckis, what was it, Beowulf, and all those sorts of films. And people were always complaining about it. It's that same idea. It's like, it looks human, and then when you see the movements, they're not quite perfectly accurate to what you expect in real life, and so you feel like it's uncomfortable.
Well, thank you very much for that call. We do have some more. I'm going to send an apology out now. Brad Prischel, thank you for your calling. We've had that. Mr. Spencer's also sent us one as well because he couldn't join us, and we've also we've had an email in as well from Axel Red. So he said, Axel Red, going through Remake 2, I noticed a bunch of gameplay mechanics that were from Resident Evil 7, and it kind of felt off to me. I wasn't too sure myself, but who's been leaving all the film for you to find?
You mean all the videotapes?
The videotapes and the camera roll.
Are you talking about the film itself, like the rolls of film?
The rolls of film.
It is very weird that someone's left a roll of film in that locker that's specifically for a commemorative. Like what's that one? I can't remember which one's the commemorative photo. I can't remember. It is very weird, and why people have been taking photos of the plaques with the puzzles on them just in case.
Yes.
Yeah. That's just a game. It's like
story mechanic,
for the purposes of a gameplay element. I try not to think about the canonicity of that fact. You do that with movies all the time when it's like, oh, why did such and such do that? And it's just like, it's because it moves the story forward. In this place, it moves the gameplay forward.
I mean, getting the photos in the original Resident Evil 2 was really great. Like when you first picked up the Tyrant photo, that was like a great insight to something that you know is coming up in the game later. Whereas in this, it's just solve a puzzle. That's all the photos are for.
That is the difference. The ones that existed there usually had some sort of plot connection and a reasoning for why they were confiscated. Because often it was like someone lurking around the sewers was arrested and their stuff was confiscated from them. So that makes sense.
But we're gonna rest assured, everybody, we're gonna get into this.
We will, and I think that's when we're actually going to do a proper review of the game. I think, and then we can review it all together, and we'll have almost like two scores at the in episode 51. So I think that probably does wrap up what our main discussion for now. I'm sure we're going to come back to obviously the next one, and probably again and again. We've got Ghost Survivors coming up as well. Free DLC, so we'll be talking about that and possible canon. But in terms of a final thought and summary of the game in isolation, Batman, what's your overall opinion on Remake 2?
I think the best way I can sum it up is when Resident Evil came out on the original Sony PlayStation. It was my favourite game when I was a kid. You know, it spawned an obsession that's lasted 2 decades for me. And when the first remake came out, it was so perfect to the point that even when I played it for the first time, I instinctively knew I'd probably hardly touch the original again. And that proved to be the case because I could probably count on one hand the amount of hours I've spent with the original. Bear in mind, that was probably one of my favourite games of all time. With Remake 2, as brilliant as it is, I don't think I can say the same thing. There are too many things that I prefer with the original game that will keep me playing the original game on a frequent basis, probably more than this. And that's the defining thing for me. If I want to enjoy a story-focused Raccoon City experience, I'll forever play Kamiya's original. However, this game is so much fun, and it is brilliant, that if I ever feel like a quick fix of classic Resident Evil nostalgia with a modern twist, Remake 2 will be my default game. I'll give it a 9 out of 10.
Very good. Rombie?
I'm going to say very similar things. I think inherently I will be very happy to see more games in the future in this style that have this balance of puzzle and difficulty and gameplay fun that isn't a remake. And I think that's inherently the difference. As a remake experience, it does not replace the original, and it's exactly like John said. Like if I had to pick in the original remake over the original game, it's very much a tough decision for me. I have such a big place for both of them, whereas here it's a very obvious choice. I would still always enjoy the original Resident Evil 2 for what it is, and this is an entirely different game, and it is a reimagining. And to use the word remake is the worst thing. It's not a remake. It is a complete reimagining, and I'm happy as a reimagining, and it's very good as a reimagining. So in that respect, as a game, it's a solid 9 out of 10. As a Resident Evil remake, it's like a 6. And when we talk about other stuff later on, I will probably revise that again based on what I have to think about more later on.
Star's turn.
Okay, Resident Evil 2 Remake is one of the best gameplay experiences you will play in this series. It is wonderful. Its presentation is top notch, and it can't stand in the shadow of the original Resident Evil 2. That's how I feel about it. The original Resident Evil 2 is just too perfect. It's too timeless. It's too much of a classic. So the fact that we can even say that this game can be considered in the same sort of spectrum, to me, is a triumph for this game. You know, and on that, I think as a game, as a Resident Evil title, it's a 9 out of 10. I agree with you guys. I think it's really, really solid. I think it's almost reference quality modern Resident Evil. This is exactly what I think the fans have been asking for 15 years, since before probably even, you know, around the Resident Evil 4 era. This is what people imagined the classic Resident Evil experience brought into the modern day would be. You know, when camera angles were finally abandoned, I think this is it. I think this is it. As a remake, it's incomparable to how timeless and perfect I think the original is. Strap yourselves in, because the canon debate is going to be a bloodbath. But I've got a very, very clear idea on what I think the canon situation is going forward, and I'm fairly confident with that. And I don't think people will be unhappy either. I think I'll leave this as a preview. I think both can coexist, and that's a compliment to the remake.
There you go. I would echo everything that's been said. I think it's one of the best, if not the best, survival horror experiences I've ever had, and it certainly harked back to the survival horror games that I grew up loving. I think Capcom are on a roll with Resident Evil 7, and to an extent Revelations 2, I might add. I think that also helped pave the way in ensuring that more of a creepy atmosphere was necessary compared to what come before it. So between Revelations 2, 7, and now Remake, or Reimagining 2, I think Capcom are hitting their stride, and I can only hope RE8 is in the same manner. But I would agree with the score for the game itself. I could not recommend it highly enough. And I'd certainly recommend it as a jumping in point for many fans as well. I think it's a really good game to play this, like this, now learn more by playing the original and the and 3 and Code Veronica and all that. That's my view. I would also, yes, the canon debate's going to be interesting, and I'll leave that at that as well. We have time. I think we have time to squeeze in this podcast edition of Neptune's Biohazard Quiz.
The quiz. A test of knowledge, especially as a competition between individuals or teams as a form of entertainment. Usually hosted by a quizmaster.
Can I just ask if you had all of these questions independently verified?
It doesn't even know the general knowledge stuff. Why is this about this quizmaster?
It's not going to be one of these quizzes.
I think we should get another question, John, don't you?
Already fallen into controversy.
That's to be expected.
And once again, Nick is at the centre of that controversy.
Absolutely.
This is Neptune's Biohazard Quiz. Batman. Star Tyrants. George Trevor. Robbie McGregor. Mr. Spencer. Neptune Biohazard Quiz.
So if everyone can clear their notepads, so some questions come in from our fans out there who have kindly sent me some questions. You'll be pleased to know they're all Remake 2 themed. So how have you been paying attention?
Probably not.
Because for one of the questions you really, really would have. So the first 3 questions do come in from Brad Bishel, who really apologise for doing your call in. That's next time, I promise. So question number 1, according to the pamphlet, how much is the admission to the Raccoon City Jazz Festival?
This requires research and things like that. I can't remember.
Welcome to Jazz Club.
That's a canon question. It's got to be for next week, that one.
There we go. Question number 2. What was the name of the cheerleader Rick is talking about in his email to Wayne?
Oh, these are brutal people.
Final one from Brad. Question number 3. On what day was Leon supposed to start at the RPD? Question number 4 comes in from Axel Red. Which of the keys is absent from Leon's game? In terms of which of the precinct keys is absent from Leon's game? And finally, a real humdinger from Ploppy54. In the Watchman's room, what is the score on the dartboard?
I actually am going to give kudos for that one. I don't think that I know the answer at all, but that's...
Wow. Join us after this when we'll run through those answers.
You can leave your hand on.
So, question number 1 was, how much was the pamphlet to Raccoon City Jazz Fest? Batman?
I'm going to guess $8.
Okay, Stars Tyrant?
I'm just going to guess at 10.
Rombie?
I'm pretty sure it's 10.
It is $10. Kids are free, under 10, but $10 it is.
I can't remember what the safe combination is. Is it SXK or something? Or
ZS... No, either ZS or SZ. Oh God, I've done it so many times. I should remember this.
This is.
There we go. Question number 2. What was the name of the cheerleader Rick talking about in his email to Wayne? Rombie, did you know this one?
I cannot remember for the life of me. No, I remember the file, but I don't remember. It's it's the last email I think of the series of emails. I remember that much.
Yes. Batman, did you know?
I don't know. It begins with a J? Is it Joanne? Joan? Something like that? I'm not sure.
Stars Tyrant?
It's Rebecca Chambers wearing a cheerleader outfit from Deadly Silence.
Did you know?
No. Not at all.
No, it's Susie or Suze.
Suze.
Suze. Question number 3. On what day was Leon supposed to start at the RPD? Stars Tyrant?
I don't know. He says he was due to start a week ago, so I'm just gonna take 7 off 29 and go 22. So a second.
Batman?
I think it's September 25th.
Rombie?
I had 24th.
Point to Batman. It's the 25th.
Oh, very good.
Damn.
8 a.m. start.
Is that in the file then, or does it?
It's in the file that's in his inventory at the start of the game.
Shit, yeah.
I remember it being not too many days beforehand, but I couldn't remember the exact date, so my guess was 24th. So damn.
Close.
Pretty close.
Question number 4. Which of the precinct keys is absent from Leon's game? Batman?
It's the heart key, I think.
Okay. Stars Tyrant?
It is the heart key.
Rombie?
Yeah, I'm 100% confident it's the heart key.
She gets it from the picture frame.
It does. It's the heart key. Points all around there. And finally, what is the score in the on the dartboard? There we go. Probable guesses, I think. Rombie?
165.
165. That's a very. Is that possible in 3? I don't know.
Yeah, it is.
It is. Stars Tyrant?
180.
The obvious one.
Batman?
72.
Points to Batman.
No, in this reimagining world, he just doesn't get the points. It's 109. And so let's look at those final scores, and it's a draw for everyone. Everyone's a winner or a loser, depending on your point of view. Everyone scores 2 points. So, and thank you everyone for the calls. I've got some more as well for next week. For next podcast. So we've got some more coming for you guys as well. So thank you very much for listening to the quiz. Join us next time when we'll have some more questions. Well, that has been an extremely lengthy podcast. I apologise. We knew it was going to be a long podcast because such is the anticipation of this game. There's so many points, and I don't feel we haven't quite gone into the detail regarding the canon issues, and I'm sure there's still going to be some lingering points that we want to bring up in episode 51 as well.
So long, in fact, it sounds like you're losing your voice.
I know, my voice is going. There we go. Bedtime. It's midnight. It's bedtime. There we go. So I hope we can record episode 51 fairly quickly, actually, to try and keep on the hype train going, because I think it's starting to settle down now as to the canon issues, and more people are starting to question, well, yeah, I like the game, but where does it fit? What's its place in this world? And I think more people will start asking questions, and then that's what we're going to be focusing on, and that's where the debate's going to be moving forward. So on that note, I thank everyone for listening. I thank everyone for calling in. Apologies again for the people we couldn't quite get around to. You will be on the next one, I can assure you. And thank you for the questions as well. So it's goodbye from me, Neptune.
Goodbye from me, Batman.
Goodbye from me, Stars Tyrant.
Goodbye from me, Rombie.